Hello.
Mr. Kurt, how are you?
I'm doing fine. How about yourself?
I'm doing well, thanks. We'll get started here in a minute. I was trying to play. As you saw that slideshow that I had, but there was no sound to it. There was supposed to be sound.
Well, luckily everybody knows what Hail to the Chief sounds like, so there's
But
that.
I'm curious to see if this actually helps the sound, though. Real quick, I'm just going to try something. Well, of course, now there was sound.
The best laid plans of mice and men.
That's okay though, because what we're gonna do is I'm gonna play that for the audience at the end of this. When we're all done, I'll play them the slideshow with the sound so they can actually hear it.
That sounds like a plan.
It's always trial and error with these wonderful streaming things. So, well, welcome, Kurt. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Looks like we already got about almost 20 people in here, which is great. We already have a shout out to Kurt by a friend there, Alec Schuberth. So very cool.
I'm sorry about the Minnesota Vikings, Alec.
Oh, well, so am I, Alec. Jeez, if we're a Vikings fan. But anyway, so Kurt, thanks for being here with us. Welcome, everyone. This is going to be a lot of fun tonight. Kurt and I actually got in contact with one another probably over a year ago, or roughly a year ago now. Obviously, I had been doing my adventure with all the gravesite hunting and everything with the presidents and vice presidents and such. And I actually just happened to come across Kurt's Instagram page one day, and I started reading more about Kurt, and I said, well, whoa. If I thought that I was doing something big, this guy's done this a long time ago when he was a young boy, and he's definitely much more experienced than I am at this. So Kurt and I got to talking. It was awesome. He's become a good friend of mine. Him and I have met up a few times and gone and seen some graves together. It's been a lot of fun. And Kurt was so gracious enough to come on here and do this. I figured there's always a lot of, presidential grading videos that you see where people give grades to the presidents, but no one really gives a grade to the presidential grave sites. So speaking as both myself and Kurt have seen all of those in person, we thought this would be fun. I just want to read a little bit about Kurt, just so everybody can get an idea of who Kurt is. Per his findagrave.com profile, Kurt Deion has visited 840 famous graves and counting since he was 8 years old. In 2015, Kurt was interviewed on the C-SPAN program Q&A for having visited every presidential and vice presidential interment site. In the past, he worked as a volunteer at the JFK Library in Boston and as an intern at both the Adams National Historical Park and Church of the Presidents in Quincy, Massachusetts. Kurt has also earned his History MA through UMass Boston's Public History program in 2019. And I'm going to leave Kurt's information as far as his Instagram down below in the description of this video, but go follow Kurt on Instagram at KD Grave Hunter, all one word, K as in Kurt, D as in Deion, Grave Hunter. That is his Instagram handle. Did I get all of that correct there, Kurt?
Thank you. Definitely appreciate it. And normally that's when I would also plug my website, kurtzhistoricscites.com, but it's been down for the last month as I'm doing a redo. So it's been down for the first time since I was 14 years old. 12 last 12 years. So I'm sure that once I put something on Instagram that it's all back up 2.0, I'm sure you'll put something in your story or something on Instagram. So people can look forward to that, and hopefully the near future. A friend's going to help me out with that. So.
Great. Sounds great. Yeah, I've seen Kurt's website before he started to kind of do the reboot and the revising of it. Really fascinating, cool stuff. Now, Kurt, real quick before we get started here, there's a couple things I do want to go over, just some housekeeping things, so to speak.
Oh, sure.
One thing I want to touch on, though, is, what I just read, that bio of yours says 840 famous graves. Can you kind of elaborate a little bit on what that means, famous graves, so to speak?
So on the findagrave.com database, there's about maybe 200 million grave related memorials. So sometimes people are cremated, of course, or say if their body was donated to science, but it could be for just family members, your parents, your grandparents, great grandparents, aunts, uncles. It could also be famous individuals. So Find a Grave tends to designate, of course, it's all their own criteria of sorts, but if somebody, say, a president they think is famous, will get a kind of a gold star symbol on their findagrave.com memorial. So and famous can be subjective. There are some that have a famous designation that I would say, well, are you going to say they're famous? And then there are some other individuals that I'm kind of confused why they wouldn't qualify as famous. One is actually in this picture here, Mr. Lavelle, Detective James Lavelle, who I met when I was in high school, and I actually then ended up sponsoring his memorial to remove the ads. But in my opinion, he's in a Pulitzer Prize winning photograph, and I would definitely think he'd be worthy of a famous designation, but he hasn't gotten it as of yet. So we'll see. So again, it can vary, but 840 so far, and I think by the end of next year, I want to really push myself. Can I possibly get to 1,000? I mean, going to California would help. I have a lot of graves to see there, a few hundred. So
yes. On my recent trip to California, Kurt and I were in contact with each other pretty often, and I had to cut my trip a little short, but it was funny because he was saying, if you go to this cemetery, there's like 80 that you can see. So you're going to have to narrow it down. So that's pretty interesting, though. Now, again, one more thing before we kind of get into things. Mm-hmm. How old were you? Since we're doing the presidents, we'll stick with just presidents. How old were you when you saw your very first presidential gravesite, and who was it?
Well, it would be summer of 2003, so I was 8 years old, and it was John Adams in Quincy, Massachusetts, and obviously for those who know, the Church of the Presidents there, John Quincy Adams followed a couple seconds later when I looked to the right. They're in the crypt of the Church of the Presidents there, the United First Parish Church. My uncle and his girlfriend at the time took my sister and myself, and I got my first 4 under my belt that summer, 2003, before I started deciding that, okay, I want to do this, get every single president. That didn't come till around December 2003. I had turned 9 by that point. I've got a September birthday. So it was then I was 9, and my father saw the C-SPAN program. It was a rerun of a 2000 program where C-SPAN founder Brian Lamb and presidential historian Richard Norton Smith were talking about their presidential gravesite travels, and also how it related to a book that C-SPAN had just put out, Who's Buried in Grant's Tomb, a guide to presidential gravesites. And my dad saw it, he told me about it, and I was already thinking, I've already been to the 2 Adamses, Kennedy in Washington, and they were at that moment 36. So I already seen 4 of the 36, and I said, "Can we do that?" And then it took from then until 2012 when I finished up my first run through during. I was 17 during April vacation of high school. I got my last one. To that point, as we of course know, unfortunately, that people eventually growing old and passing away, that certain categories are like presidents are not stagnant. There never be any more Three Stooges added on. Or Declaration of Independence signers, but presidents, as long as we have the U.S. Constitution, unfortunately, the list of deceased members will grow, but then there will be people such as us who want to go pay our respects. So.
Absolutely, that's awesome stuff. Now, who was your very last one that you saw? I mean, I know it's obviously Bush is the last one because he was the last one to die, but before. President Bush died a couple of years ago. Who was your final one before that?
Mine was Lyndon Johnson. Lyndon B. Johnson at his ranch in Stonewall, Texas. Cool. So, and I know that barring that, in a sense, you sort of got your last one recently with was it Nixon the last one?
Nixon was my last one. So yeah, just to touch on myself. I mean, most of the people watching probably know that my channel a bit. My story is not nearly as probably interesting as Kurt's. It's a little bit of a wild man type scenario. Last year, furloughed from work, bored out of my mind. Global pandemic hit all of us, of course. So I had all this time on my hands, and I said, what am I going to do to stay safe, of course, socially distanced? And I Googled famous graves in New Jersey one day, saw Whitney Houston, Yogi Berra, all those kind of names. And then I saw Grover Cleveland. I said, oh, that would be cool. So I went down to Princeton and I saw President Cleveland's grave. And that kind of sparked a craziness for about 7 or 8 months and went all over the country, seeing all these grave sites, of course. And my final 2 to get really were out in California. And I just was able to obtain those within the last few weeks, which is awesome. Now, yes, technically I haven't seen and stood in front of Harry Truman's gravesite, because the museum and library there was closed in Independence, Missouri, and it was being renovated also, not just COVID. So I haven't actually stood there. So Kurt gives me an asterisk. He's basically Kurt becomes the Ford Frick of my presidential gravesite hunting. He gives me the Roger Maris asterisk next to completing them all because as I've seen. Pretty much all of them. The only 2 I haven't really stood right directly in front of are Eisenhower, because that was closed, and Harry Truman. I've seen Woodrow Wilson in the past, just not recently, and I've seen Grant also in the past when I was younger, just not recently. So, but there you go. So now getting into this, if it's okay with you, Kurt, I figure we'll kind of kick this off. I wanted to just touch on real quick, and I'm going to show just this on my screen real quick, the criteria so everybody understands exactly what we're working with here. Just so everybody's clear on exactly how we're coming up with these gradings, because a lot of people will say, well, this is just your opinion. You guys have seen all of them, so you're just going off of what you think is cool? Well, yes, to a certain extent, but we also, Kurt and I discussed this, and we came up with a criteria, and that criteria, I hope everybody can see that on their screen now. Kurt, can you see that there, the criteria?
Yes.
So basically what it is, guys, this is the way that we came up with this grading. Kurt and I discussed it. It's basically these 3 bullet points. The first, of course, is going to be the aesthetics, the appearance. Does it look pleasing to the eye? Is it cool looking? Is it something that we were fascinated by when we saw it? So yes, appearance definitely plays a role in how we came up with the grade. The second thing that we are using is accessibility. And what we mean by that is it handicap accessible? Can someone, that's handicapped in a wheelchair, are they able to go see this tomb or this grave? Is it handicap accessible? What are the hours of operation? Now, we're not obviously going to tell you, break that down. What we mean by that, though, is are these grave sites, whichever ones we're grading, are they accessible to the public 24/7, 365 days a year? Or is it a tomb that you have to go inside of that's locked and only open 3 days a week? That sort of thing. So what's the accessibility like? And going along with the accessibility, what about the cost? Not all of these are free to see. If you go to Mount Vernon, where George Washington is buried, you go to Monticello, where Thomas Jefferson, of course, lived and is buried. They cost money for you to get on the grounds and to go see the house and the grave sites. And I believe, because I was just at Mount Vernon, I want to say it's like $15 to $20 per person to get in. So, is the cost something that might be a little high in our opinion, that might be kind of pricing people away from going to see these sites? So that we took into consideration as well. And last but not least, we thought it would be interesting to kind of put into this, how well does it represent the person and their presidency? And what I mean by that is, is it a grand, huge, amazing monument for a person that might not have been the most ethical or most wonderful person in the world, and they might have had a really bad presidency? So do they really deserve this huge, epic monument? I know they're a president, but still, kind of does it fit the person? Somebody that's maybe quiet and modest, like a Calvin Coolidge, who is, kind of an average president, probably most would say. Does his gravesite and his final resting place fit that? Does it fit that persona? So those are the criteria that we took into this when we came up with these grades. Is there anything that you kind of wanted to add to that, Kurt, or did I kind of cover that well?
No, I think you covered it well. So basically, it's kind of a mix of some hard and concrete facts and a bit of our opinions. And then we're just going to try to have some fun. And obviously, again, a lot of it is going to be opinion all the same about those various categories. So some people may totally disagree, but also it's just grading President Graves. So in a sense, it's not the end of the world by any means.
No. And that's a great point, Kurt. Guys, we already have like over 20 people, almost 25 people in here. I'm sure they'll probably even get even more as this goes on. Please keep the comments coming. Ask us questions if you want here in this live chat. But let's keep things friendly too. Let's be cordial and respectful to one another. Like Kurt just said, these are our opinions. Kurt and I, I'm sure, are not going to agree on all of these. Just like a few weeks ago or a month or so ago when I had a presidential grading of just the presidents with Thomas Balcerski, him and I didn't agree on everything. So, this is just for fun. Now, I think, Kurt, what you're going to do is you're going to share your screen and bring up your tier list, and we're going to kind of just go from there. Does that sound good to you, or you want me to do it?
I want you to do it because I have mine printed out, so I thought that you
fine. Yeah, not a problem at all.
Do it, and you can drag it and do it. But we do have 39 president graves, so we should. I don't think people want to be with us till midnight. Maybe you do. Maybe you really have no Friday plans. But.
Yeah, exactly. Now let's see here. So, can you see my tier system on my screen?
Yes, I can. So I imagine other people can as well.
Okay, perfect. So what we're going to do is I didn't put them in order, but that's fine. I can obviously jump them up. Obviously, we're just doing A through F here. But the way we're doing this, just so everyone knows, we're not going in chronological order of the presidencies. So it's not going to be Washington, Adams, Jefferson, et cetera, et cetera. But we're also not going alphabetical or anything like that. We're actually following what the wonderful book that I always quote and use in my videos, The President is Dead by Louis Picone. It's the format that Louis Picone took in his book, where we're going to go in order of the order of the presidents, the way they died. So, Washington was the first, and then whoever the last one was, which obviously will be George H.W. Bush. So this is going to be in the order the presidents died in. So keep that in mind. So if you seem like it's jumping around a bit, it is, but it actually is in accurate historical order of when they passed away. So just wanted to touch on that so everybody's clear. So Kurt, you are my guest. I want you to take it away. I want you to tell us, obviously, first and foremost, and what I'm going to do is while we're doing this, I'm also going to show some pictures of the grave sites as we do this. So keep that in mind, everyone, that you will be seeing pictures of each grave site as we go along here. So when Kurt's speaking about them and when I'm speaking about them, you can kind of get a visual of what they look like. All of these photos, please keep in mind, folks, were taken by myself or by Kurt. These are not stock photos. These are photos that both Kurt and myself have taken when we have visited these locations and sites. So, Kurt, without further ado, as they say, let's take it away, sir.
All right. Well, the first president to die was George Washington on December 14th, 1799. And people are familiar with the Washington's tomb situation. They'll know that what you're showing right now on screen is not the original tomb. He was originally interred in the tomb about 100 yards away, so a football field away, right there. And as you can see, a little worse for wear. I believe it was prone to some flooding from the Potomac River, or if it rained a lot. Like, unfortunately, the Northeast United States dealing with a lot of heavy rains and flooding the last few days. So I think people can understand why that kind of situation not good to have with a tomb. So per Washington's will, a later tomb was built, the one that you showed in the first photo, and that was from 1831. And the sarcophagi shown there, Martha Washington on the left, George Washington on the right. Those are from 1837, and they're Philadelphia marble. So I gave my preliminary grade here for Washington's tomb is I gave it a letter grade of B. So I think that it overall, I think it represents Washington pretty well. He did want to be interred at Mount Vernon. He specifically asked for that spot at his vineyard. I think that the sarcophagus for him is pretty nice with the eagle and the shields. One thing that, and this could be really nitpicky, but something that for whatever reason kind of bothers me about it is, and you can't tell exactly from this photo because it's slightly angled, but it's not really symmetrical within it. Martha Washington is kind of more hidden off to the left there. Washington sticks out, and then the black metal door, you see that square in the back there, that's where all the other Washington relatives are interred, such as Supreme Court Justice Bushrod Washington. That's offset a little bit too, so it could be really nitpicky, but I don't know. Maybe I would have liked a little more symmetrical on the interior part. It does cost a little bit to get in there. Of course, you understand they have to upkeep the historic site, and they have to pay interpreters and guides, staff of all kinds. So I understand that, but you can get to it. There's no stair problems there or anything. They are open. If not 365 days a year, 362 days a year. They might be closed only Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year's, maybe.
I don't think so, actually. I mean, the website on Mount Vernon does say 365 days a year open.
Well, then, there you go. So I also do like to point out that one thing that kind of also dampens it a little bit for me is it was at least partially built with enslaved labor. From the proprietor of Mount Vernon at the time in the 1830s, people that he enslaved. There's some interesting stories about that. I don't want to go on and on about it, but if you read Matthew R. Costello's book, The Property of the Nation, it's about Washington's tomb, Mount Vernon, the enslaved people there, and the kind of the relationship all those subjects had after his death. So look more into that book. He's a historian with the White House Historical Association, and highly recommend that book by Matthew R. Costello. So George Washington, I gave a B.
Great stuff. I'm gonna say, Kurt. I'll just kind of comment as we go along, if that's okay. I think I would be right around the same. I would kind of put the Washington tomb kind of in a B minus, maybe even C plus range for myself. So high C, low B. So probably pretty similar to you. I think Mount Vernon is fascinating. The grounds at Mount Vernon definitely are beautiful. Something I suggest anybody who is a historical fan should go see and visit. However, yeah, I mean his gravesite is cool, but it's not something that is unbelievably spectacular. It's pretty. When I first saw it, I kind of envisioned more in my head. I'd seen photos, of course, but I kind of envisioned more. So I think you're pretty much spot on, right where you have it graded. I would agree with you for the most part. And as I'm sure, obviously, as you know, Kurt, originally John Adams and others wanted Washington to be buried in the Capitol in Washington, D.C. And Martha Washington actually did agree to that. And then that ended up falling through. Am I correct on that, Kurt?
Yeah, there were various movements over time, even after he and Martha were put in that new tomb in 1831. The next year, for the centennial of Washington's birth and being born in 1732. In 1832, there were more overtures again to reinter him at the Capitol. So. Yeah, but I think Mount Vernon is where he wanted to be. I think that's where he should be. So I think that is the appropriate call.
I agree with you 100% on that. So good stuff. I love it. Now, the next one, did you have anything to add with Washington, or should we move on?
No, if we both agree with B, then, I know you said BC, so why don't we keep it in B?
I think so. I think we should just keep it there. I like it. Now, so the next one to die it's a little interesting. For anyone that doesn't know, we're going to be doing Thomas Jefferson because he did die first. But both Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, in probably the most coincidental circumstance in the history of mankind, they both died on July 4th of 1826, which was exactly 50 years to the day of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, obviously July 4th of 1776. Both of them died on the same day, 50 years to the day of the signing. Both, of course, integral parts of the Declaration of Independence happening. And, of course, the famous quote from John Adams as he was dying was, "Thomas Jefferson lives on." And, of course, Mr. Adams did not know, he was not aware that Thomas Jefferson actually had passed away several hours before him. So Jefferson did actually die first. But, of course, this was back in the day of where there was no Twitter or social media, so nobody knew that right away. So, obviously, Mr. Jefferson, Thomas Jefferson, our third president, is up next. Kurt, the floor is yours.
Well, the historical stickler in me is going to, of course, say that I believe only Hancock would have signed it on July 4th, and most others, I believe, signed it August 2nd, but that's the stickler in me. But moving on, Jefferson. So you're showing photos of the plantation home there, Monticello. Again, unfortunately, Jefferson was one of many early founders and presidents who enslaved people. So when you go there, of course, there's this weird balance of this looks gorgeous, and you're seeing a lot of the innovations and the good things that Jefferson did. And there's they do, as compared to apparently many years ago, they didn't do quite such a good job with covering this stuff. They do a good job of talking about the enslaved population there and Jefferson's hypocrisy with that. So when you go there, just in general, there's a wide range of emotions, I think. And of course, being this place is so tied to Jefferson, He is interred there. So that's an obelisk that's from the 1880s. That's not his original grave. The original marker is a bit worn down, and now it's in St. Louis, Missouri. I think, speaking of Tom Spalzerski, I think he actually might have seen it today. I think I saw it in his Instagram story.
Very cool.
But I recognize that. So I believe that's at the University of Missouri now. So this is from the 1880s, the replacement. It's surrounded by a fence. I mean, you can go right up to it and see it. If you're 10 years old and you're scrawny enough to slip through the bars of the gate, like I was, then in 2005, then you can get up for a closer picture. And you can see there the inscription. Here was buried Thomas Jefferson, author of the Declaration of Independence, of American Independence, of the Statute of Virginia for Religious Freedom, and father of the University of Virginia. So those are the things that he wanted to be remembered for on there, not necessarily for being president. I ended up giving this a C, just the gravesite itself. Again, nothing too spectacular. It does have the epitaph that Jefferson wanted. It is, again, you can't get right up next to it unless you're a bit of a scofflaw, like a 10-year-old I myself was. So the accessibility generally you can get right near it, but not as close as I did right there. There is an interesting story where he was buried there because he and a friend, they had an agreement early on that whichever one of them died first, they'd bury the other in that area. It was the other friend, Dabney Carr, died first, got buried there, and then Jefferson was buried there in 1826. So it does have that interesting connection there for sure, but not really visually interesting overall. And also I've been twice. It was actually 10 years to the day, totally unintentional. I visited, that picture was July 12th, 2005. And then I visited July 12th, 2015, totally incidental, both him and Madison. And when I remember when I went 6 years ago in 2015, the cost to get to onto Monticello, I believe, was $25 a person.
Yeah.
So again, you need to pay people. There's upkeep, and they do a lot of great work there. I talk about Jefferson and the enslaved community, but obviously also that's pricing some people out a bit. It's not making it as accessible to see Jefferson's grave, and in reality, let's face it, learn more about the history and contextualization, which I know we're not really focusing on here, but again, that kind of prices people out of everything of it. So again, some segments of the population. So
yeah,
a letter grade to C, in my opinion.
Okay, great, amazing stuff, Kurt. Truly incredible. Thank you. For those of you that know me and know my Dead History channel, many of you are familiar that this is my favorite president. I am very well aware of his hypocrisy regarding slavery and the terrible things that he did regarding enslaved people. So I definitely, of course, take all of that into consideration. I'm just basing that he's my favorite president just based on his presidency, Louisiana Purchase, a lot of different things. And then, of course, yes, the TJ thing, both of us born on April 13th. So, share a birthday with him. So just always been kind of fascinated with that since I was younger. But I have to agree. Now, listen, this was one of my favorite places to visit. I thought Monticello was absolutely beautiful. Kurt, it sounds like you agree. The grounds there are just spectacular. It's definitely something to see and to behold. Truly incredible. And they do a wonderful job there, presenting it to the public. It's spectacular. It truly is. I take that into consideration with my grading, because I agree with Kurt, believe it or not, even though this is one of my favorite people. I was not impressed whatsoever with his overall gravesite. It's very basic. The obelisk is just kind of, I don't know what, maybe a 12, 15 foot tall obelisk. It's nothing spectacular. It just really isn't. It's pretty underwhelming in my opinion. So I would agree. I would put him in a C range, very average.
Yeah.
I think more of the draw there, if you're a Jefferson fan or a history fan, whatever it may be, especially if you're a Jefferson fan, go there. Of course, see it, pay your respects to the final resting place there of Jefferson, but really spend time and focus on seeing the homestead there at Monticello and all the other wonderful things that you can see and learn about there at Monticello, because they're much more interesting than his gravesite is. So I would agree with you, Kurt. We're going to leave good old Mr. Jefferson right there at C.
All right. Then next moves to president that I have a little bit of close connection to, affinity for, and that's John Adams. Died 6 hours later, and one of his last utterances, not the very last one, but one of his last utterances was supposedly Thomas Jefferson survives, and he was wrong by 6 hours. But like you said, no way of knowing at that time. So this is a church where I interned from June to August 2019. I was there, the History and Visitors Program intern there, and this is totally separate from the Adams National Historical Park because this is an active congregation. It's a Unitarian. They do a lot of social justice work. Well, they have a prison reading program in the basement, and they just do a lot of. They closed for a few years ago for the International Day of Climate Change Awareness. I know that's not the exact name, but for that. And so this is a building that is primarily constructed of granite that came from John Adams' quarry there in Quincy, which, as I always point out, is, yes, pronounced Quincy with a Z, like zipper or zoo. Not Quincy, it's Quincy. And so, same with John Quincy Adams and the person that they're both named for, Colonel John Quincy, Abigail's grandfather, Abigail Adams' grandfather. But yeah, so he had a granite quarry, and all the granite that you see there, with the exception of those 4 columns, actually came from John Adams' quarry. His quarry was not deep enough to get those columns out in one solid stone piece like they wanted. Now, the church that he and Abigail attended was actually a neighboring it, and it was a wooden structure. So neither he nor Abigail ever set foot in this building. It was built in 1828. He and Abigail were moved in there during construction, lower down into the crypt, which is located, if you walked right into that, through that center doorway that you're showing right there, they would be right below your feet is where John and Abigail are situated. Yeah, it's again, I have a personal connection there. It's really interesting building designed by Alexander Paris, who also designed Quincy Market, for those of you who are familiar with that, in Boston, near Faneuil Hall. You go right through this gate right here, very interesting. You go in and there's sarcophagi for John Adams and Abigail. You can see right there, John Adams on the left with the flag, and on Quincy and Louisa Catherine, then when you go in and are on the right, we'll talk about them, I'm sure, like ever so briefly later. But I'm going to give this a B, because it's, in some ways, it's quite spectacular, and other ways not so much. And I'm really trying to put my biases aside there. Somebody who knows all the ins and outs of everything. Like I told, I think I might have told you and another friend the other day, it's like, I know where the light switch is. I know where to go, turn the lights on and off on the Adamses there. But I think it's really a personal place for them. The upstairs sanctuary is gorgeous. The dome, the interior dome, is designed to look like the Pantheon in Rome. And up there in the sanctuary too, there's a bust of John Adams, of John Quincy Adams. You can sit in John Quincy Adams' pew, because he actually did attend services in this building. Louisa did not. She was Episcopalian. But you go in there, and I have to say, from just a personal account, because I think a lot of people have a great affinity, especially for John and Abigail. They'll walk in right there, and I've seen people cry. I've seen people get really emotionally moved during some of the tours I gave in there, and again, it's not maybe as spectacular. Some of the tombs we'll be talking about in a little bit, but I think it's pretty good there. The one downside is it's not open all year round. It's just a few months of the spring, fall, and a little bit in the spring, summer, and a little bit in the fall. But they can't. The tour, I know from working 3 different jobs or internships there in Quincy Center, that the tourism there is not sustainable in the winter. So that's just how it has to go. But also gets really cold in there in the winter too, and very oppressive heat in the summer as well. But that'd be open at some point. But now the elevator down to the crypt is just a recent addition of a few years ago. There's still a little lip there where you can't really fit into the crypt, but if you were, say, in a wheelchair, but at least now you can get down there and go up to the doorway a bit. So. And they just ask for a $5 donation from adults. It does not go to the church. It goes specifically to the History and Visitors program. So like if they had an intern like myself, that would be going toward paying the intern's salary. So I'm going with a B.
All right. Great stuff, Kurt. This is awesome. I know this is near and dear to your heart, speaking as you were so involved. And, I'm also, Kurt has his biases when it comes to something like this because he worked there. I'm trying to put my bias aside because, like a lot of that are watching, based on the things that I've said during my videos on this channel, I had some very, very unique experiences. Kurt, him and I have talked many times. He can speak pretty highly to that. He's visited all these sites when there really wasn't a global pandemic going on. So I got very special, almost one-on-one interactions and things with these sites. This being one of them. This was closed. The church was closed last year due to COVID. I contacted the church, and I actually was given a private tour of the Adamses' tomb and the church all by myself. By a wonderful gentleman there at the church that Kurt actually knows from his time working there. Wonderful person, and he let me in and showed me around, and so I got a private tour. So, obviously something like that is a lot more unique and special. Just doesn't tend to happen to people very often. So, but I'm putting all of that aside, and I will say that I will give it. I'm going to agree with you. I think it's a B. I think there's something very, very unique and very cool about the fact that it's, in the basement of this church that obviously John Quincy Adams attended and was a parishioner at. Now, as you said, John and Abigail were not parishioners of the church that they're buried in. That church is no longer there.
The congregation, yes. The building, no.
Correct. And just briefly, Kurt, if you could just touch on real quick, John and Abigail were not, or John at least, he was not originally there. He was across the street in the Hancock Cemetery originally, and then his son, John Quincy, wanted him moved there. Is that correct?
Yeah, none of the 4 people that are in the crypt were originally there. All 4 of them were at various points in the tomb in Hancock Cemetery, what used to be across the street. Now it's across the the Hancock Adams Common there, and it still says J.Q. Adams on it. And after I was done interning at the National Park, done interning at the Church of the Presidents, my job was partly giving tours of that cemetery and the old Adams tomb there. But so I think we can move on to the next one.
Yes, absolutely. So now the next one is Monroe, James Monroe. So before I give it over to Kurt, James Monroe was originally buried. He actually died in New York City, and he was originally buried in New York City at a very, very, very small little private cemetery called the Marble Cemetery. It's right there in downtown New York in the financial district. It is, I mean, Kurt, you and I have kind of laughed about this. I think it's only open about 2 or 3 days throughout the entire year. I mean, it's hard.
I've never been yet myself, but
yeah,
someday.
I've been there. I haven't been there when it's been open. I've been there a few times, and you can actually see from where the front gate of the cemetery is. You can see where James Monroe's original plot was, because it's not very far from the front entrance gate. However, I've never been able to go in and actually stand there because it's never open. And he was there for, if correct me if I'm wrong, Kurt, wasn't it about 23 years or so? He was there in New York before he was reinterred to Richmond, Virginia, where he is at now, which you guys are seeing now on your screen.
I think it was about 27, maybe.
Okay.
I think he died in 1831, and I think he got relocated to Richmond there in 1858. I'm going to cut to the chase and just say this is an A. This is Gothic. It's based off of a tomb in Paris, and Monroe was a Francophile, just like Jefferson. Great affinity for French culture. I think I was incorrect the other day, though, TJ. We were talking about this. I believe that Monroe is actually not inside the sarcophagus there. I think he is also in a vault beneath all that, as opposed to being actually in the sarcophagus. But I mean, look at that intricate detail there. Now, when I went both times, 2005, 2015, it was black like that. When you went, it was they did a paint analysis and they determined that this right here, this kind of cream or ivory color, was the original paint scheme. So although I definitely have an affinity for the black one, I can understand this, and maybe it shows the detail a bit more. You can also see, just flipping back and forth there, I mean, look how much they improved the grounds from 2005. Yeah, it was all this dirt and overturned, and then there's the cobblestones and everything. So they had already done that part of kind of like the landscaping and the cobblestones by the time I returned in 2015. Done a great job there in President's Circle. So even adding the kind of more of the ambiance. It's free, and I believe you can get right up there. Even if you're have a disability, and probably open 365 days a year, pretty close to it. So just an A.
Yeah, it's tremendous. It really is. I loved it. I thought it was tremendous. A lot of people, of course, refer to this and nickname it the bird cage. I think, to me, when I first saw it, my first impression of it was what you kind of just touched on, Kurt. It reminded me more of almost like a cathedral-looking type structure, more so than any sort of like bird cage. I thought it was tremendous and beautiful. Even my son, who obviously was there last year with me, that's Henry right there. He thought it was really cool looking. So I agree with you. He's one of the ones that I would give an A to as well. So definitely agree there.
All right.
Let's move on to our next, who would be the fourth president of the United States, who is James Madison, and his wonderfully beautiful plantation estate at Montpelier. So take it away.
Yeah, as you can see there, like you said, really aesthetically gorgeous estate there. Again, the sad reality is that enslaved people were kept there against their will. So again, there's always this strange dichotomy of varying emotions there. But they put several $1 million into renovating the home there, and they do a lot to actually connect with the descendants of the enslaved people who were enslaved by the Madisons there. And I believe that they have a lot of say in how things are interpreted, things that go on there. So Montpelier itself, a great place to go, and doing a really good job about, again, covering the good, the bad, and the ugly, and doing it in a good, I believe, good social justice, anti-racist way. All the same, now I'm conflicted, because then when I see this, I mean, man, that's a good picture you took there, TJ, of that. But and this was where he lived, and the place where you greatly associate with him. So I will admit I have some flexibility here. So if you come at my grading here, but I was also thinking, now, are we saying compared to like an average regular person, where would this rank in the grade? But if I'm going along just like the president scale of graves, I think I might be bold and even give this an F. I mean, it's it doesn't even have his first name on it. It says Madison, and this is when he was born, when he was died. It just really overshadows.
I zoomed in on it there, Kurt. You can kind of see the Madison.
Yeah. It's a little bit worse for wear in some regards. I think it might be. They say 25 feet tall, but I don't know. But maybe it's 25 feet tall. Kind of overshadows Dolly Madison there. Again, I know that's such an extreme sounding grade, but I mean, compared to some of the graves we're going to see soon, I mean, I don't know. Again, it doesn't even have his first name. It's like Madison, born, died.
Okay, so you have him down here at F. So this is the first one, Kurt, that you and I disagree on.
All right.
I agree with you that the actual obelisk, or obelisk, however you want to pronounce it, I understand it's not overly aesthetically pleasing or wow. I found the fact that it's, in this little Madison family cemetery here, the grounds itself, I can't give it an F. I would have to agree that, aesthetically it's not great. I would have to go either low C or D here, and I will, since you're my guest, I will let you decide, but we got to take him out of F, in my opinion.
Well, I think we meet in the middle and we go with D.
All right, sounds good to me. All right, I agree.
Listen, I had some flexibility with it, and that was, again, that's a nice shot there that you took, but again, I gotta have some, I mean, it's a great shot. I'll give you that. And of course, again, I have affinity for it and all the president graves, whether or not I actually like the president or think that they were a good president or terrible, awful president. I'm trying to not take that into consideration of anything, but of any of the grades. So, but I don't know. D's fine with me. If you want to move on to William Henry Harrison.
So now we have, we are up to Mr. William Henry Harrison, who holds the distinction of having the shortest presidency in the history of our country.
32 days.
Yep. So a very short presidency, but quite a spectacular memorial to him. So, Kurt, floor is yours.
All right. So this is on Mount Nebo, this hill that was once part of Harrison's estate near the Ohio River, kind of overlooks the intersection of Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana there. So this is a 60-foot shaft that's on top of the tomb here. So this was from the 1920s. Nice inscription there. The stones need some cleaning. They tend to always have a problem with upkeep here, and I know the Harrison Sims Foundation does a lot of work trying to preserve it for the Harrison family members that are interred in there. But I feel like maybe they don't always have the resources to do so, maybe as much as they would like to. This is a grave where obviously no matter what, you can always go to the outside of it, but to get inside, you need it unlocked by the caretaker, who's Bev Myers, and she let my father and me in back in August 2004, her and her late husband, Terry. and she's still there herself, and she let you in.
Yes, Bev did. Bev actually, another location that was actually closed due to COVID. There was no sort of public hours whatsoever when I went, but she so graciously met me there, unlocked it, and Bev and I had a conversation for probably about an hour at the site, her telling me all these fascinating, wonderful things about the tomb there of William Henry. So, yes, Bev, I met Bev as well.
And Bev and Terry, Mrs. and Mr. Myers, they gave me this this pin button from the 1997 rededication of the tomb there. So it looks like, I think it was in a bit better condition when I went there in August 2004 than when you went. But again, it kind of ebbs and flows, I think, kind of the condition of the tomb there. I think the shaft is limestone, 60 feet tall. And I'm gonna go with a B.
Okay.
I think just because that it's always great to get the background and the history from Mrs. Myers, and it's great that they have somebody like herself who can let people in there. But something you might have to pre-arrange an appointment. Otherwise, you can't look in and see the president and first lady, William and Anna Harrison. They're that's off to the side there on the right side. So they're not straight in. If you were looking here, if you were locked out, you could not see them inside. They're off there. And so I would say between that and just the difficulty in upkeeping it, I'm gonna go with a very good overall, but I'm gonna settle on a B in my opinion.
Okay, yeah, I think you're pretty accurate there. I would have done kind of the same thing for William Henry that I did for Washington, like a high C plus, low B. So I agree with keeping it at B. It is definitely eye catching when you pull. I mean, you can literally see this from practically a half mile away or so when you're driving up to it. You can't miss it. As Kurt said, it's about 60 foot high. This obelisk memorial, it's quite spectacular. And inside the tomb, it's small, but it's just really cool. It's really neat. It's really old, and you just get this kind of feeling of history when you're in there.
It's an interesting combination because you've got this really old tomb. You can see there how old the stones are, but then the monument on top of it is of a totally different style from a different era. So it's also a little bit of a mishmash if you really think about it. But
it is. No, you're absolutely right.
But again, it definitely has its upsides, and I just hope that they get the funds to maybe restore it again.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I agree with you. Let's. I think we'll keep him at B, and I like that. Very cool place. If you guys are in that southern Ohio area, definitely stop by and see William Henry Harrison, because it's really cool. And now, Kurt, that brings us to a president who, especially probably over the last 5 to 10 years, especially the last few years, has become quite a polarizing figure. Mr. General Andrew Jackson. They're buried there, of course, at his home plantation estate in Nashville, Tennessee, at Hermitage, the Hermitage Plantation. So, Kurt, floor is yours. Take it away.
Yeah, General Andrew Jackson, as his epitaph says that he wrote, interred at his slave plantation there, the Hermitage in or near Nashville, Tennessee. Once again, gorgeous grounds, interesting owner of the plantation. A lot of terrible history there, though, too, as well. Now, the grave is really interesting. So Mrs. Jackson died after the election of 1828, but before she and Andrew were to move into the White House, she was buried there in the flower garden at the Hermitage under a different monument than Andrew Jackson paid. I believe it was about $1,000 in 1830s money to have this designed and constructed. I have flexibility on this one too.
Well, hold on. I just want to touch on real quick. I don't
Okay.
mean to cut you off, Carl. So everybody knows this is a picture I took when I was there. You see the fence around it. And when I was there was actually a hermitage worker standing like kind of right here where my cursor is. I don't know if you guys can see that. And she was talking about the tomb. There was no way for me to maybe hop the fence and get inside and get closer. However, I know somebody who did that. So
I think as Ra's al Ghul said in Batman Begins, you lack the courage to do what is necessary. But my father ushered me over this when I was 11. So I took that photo. I hope kind of our thing was get as close of a photo as you can, so you can just read stuff better. And it's never intended with any disrespect, other than better documentation of a visit. It isn't ever done to do anything with disrespect or defiling. Of course, some people might see certain circumstances differently, but it was never done with any intended disrespect to the grave or who currently is in charge of a grave or anything. I'm really in the B to C range on it. I mean, it is quite interesting. Again, there is the fence that does keep people out of it, and I know because of some vandalism due to again great pushback, not only slavery, but of course, really the treatment of indigenous Americans, that it has been marred with graffiti in recent years. So I think there's a security camera now. So I don't think I'll ever be hopping the fence again to get in any trouble. But you can't. Now there are some informational signs over there that show you the short epitaph, the inscription that General Jackson wrote for himself. Again, referring to him as general, not president. And then his wife, he wrote. Rachel Jackson just has a really elaborate, loving epitaph there. But I'm really in the BC range, and I think I'm just gonna go with although in some ways interesting with the Greek influence there. I think I'm gonna say initially a C and see if you fight me on it.
I'm gonna go with C with you. I really am. I could have even went high C or maybe even low B here. I agree with you on everything you said. I just found it. I'll be honest. The reason I might even give it a B, but we can keep it a C, is the grounds just in general. The Hermitage grounds are, again, gorgeous, spectacular, beautiful.
And in that immediate area where you could see stuff in the same view, they usually do a good job with the flowers.
Oh yeah, the flowers were amazing. Yeah. I mean, the flower gardens and just the gardens around there, absolutely spectacular, very well kept. I could really nitpick and say let's go B, but we can keep them at C. But I think it's a wonderful, wonderful place that. Even though we know about Jackson's downfall, so people who love history should definitely go and visit. Really cool place. So now we got to go back to actually Quincy, Massachusetts, up there in the Boston area, and take a look at John Adams' son, the 6th president of the United States, John Quincy Adams.
I'm gonna make just 2 points ever so quickly. One is I'm going to brag that on my penultimate day as an intern, they gave me a slate piece from the roof. So this would have been over the presidents and first ladies, obviously without the stamp on there. But so this is slate tile from the roof that was there from 1828 to whenever they redid the roof, and within the last 10, 15, 20 years. The only real difference in the graves is because this was originally not intended to be a tomb for 4 people, only 2 people they had to add on. And this was where John Quincy and Louisa was originally a storage room for farm equipment. And they had to knock down the wall. They had to erect the wall over there where the doors were. And so that's the one thing, is that you can't see JQA and Louisa immediately just peering through the door like you can John and Abigail. But all the same, it's a B. So I think that's all that needs to be said. We don't need to drag it out. And,
I agree with you.
yeah.
I think it's
same as John Adams.
Yep,
maybe just 0.001 lower numerically if we were doing numbers, just because he's off to the side a little bit. But that's the nature of it.
I agree with you. Now we move on to Mr. James K. Polk there in Tennessee, right at basically at the steps of the state capitol there in Nashville, Tennessee. So why don't you take it away there, Kurt?
Yeah, Polk, the Polk or Polk. I guess it's supposed to be Polk, but I always end up saying Polk, so that's how it is mispronouncing with the L. So that I think I'm just gonna keep on doing. Notice respect to the Polk family, but I'm gonna give this one again. Then I see the pictures and then I kind of feel bad. I'm like, oh, that looks nice. And, I've been there in person, so I can also visualize the whole thing. But I'm going to say D because he's really off to the side there with Mrs. Sarah Polk. And Andrew Jackson's statue takes center stage, and then it's flanked on the other side by an Andrew Johnson statue. The Polks are just kind of over there. Now, aesthetically, as far as like this actual structure, I think it's interesting. But again, it's just off to the side. It can be hard to access. Not a lot of people know it's there. I also, I kind of have some reservations about. I was originally opposed to the relocation efforts to have the Polks removed to Columbia, Tennessee, where the only surviving Polk home other than the White House is. So for those who don't know, he was originally he was in a cemetery, or he died of an illness. They were just trying to bury people quickly as possible. Then the Nashville City Cemetery, they removed his body, buried him as he wished at his home in Nashville Polk Place. He wanted to be buried there. He wanted the home to be open as a museum. But then after Mrs. Polk died, that didn't happen, and they eventually tore down the house. They moved the Polks to the Tennessee State Capitol grounds there. Again, he's not center stage, kind of off to the side. And I actually think that it would behoove them now. So a few years ago, I was against moving them, and now I think I'm actually in favor of disinterring them and moving them to Columbia, Tennessee. So, because you've got 3 enslaver presidents right there with either the statues or the graves. I think that, and obviously some people can take to, they feel that the socially, the socially conscious thing to do would be to disrupt some monuments to enslavers or whatnot. And I think that, and I'm not going to necessarily get into the rights or wrongs of what to do in certain regards, but I think that for a few reasons, I think that relocating them from this spot would actually get more people to Columbia, Tennessee, where they can, so that will attract people there, and they can also just get a better interpretation of the goods and the bads and the uglies of the Polk presidency and what how his policies affected different segments of the American population. And I just think it'd be, I'm not sure that this is the appropriate place. And I think maybe it's, instead of just remaining within the Nashville city limits, I think maybe it'd be more in keeping with the spirit of his wishes to inter him at a place where he actually lived and had a connection. So for those reasons, I'm going to go with a D initially, at least for Polk.
I have to agree with you. I thought that this was, when I went there last year, like you said, I mean, the main attraction is this Andrew Jackson statue. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, on horseback even.
Correct. Yeah, I believe it's the same likeness as at least the one that's down in New Orleans. If not, also the one in Washington, D.C., near the White House. But don't quote me on that. At least, if not, it's at least they're all similar. He's on horseback.
I agree. So, and that kind of takes center stage, the Jackson statue. Then, of course, you have Andrew Johnson's statue right there.
And who wants to be associated with Andrew Johnson? So I know they're all Tennessee presidents, but
it's very odd. It's kind of very strange the way they have it set up. Like you said, it's almost like he plays third fiddle off to the side,
and he's actually there. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, exactly. He's actually buried there. So I agree with you. We're going to keep him at D because I just don't think, it's just not. It's not something that's overly spectacular whatsoever.
Yeah.
So now we move on from good old Tennessee, and we take a trip to my old Kentucky home, as they say, Kentucky, where we take a look at the 12th president of the United States, old rough and ready, Zachary Taylor. So take it away there, Kurt.
I think Cameron of the Zachary Taylor Project might have a little bit of a grudge with me for this, but my initial thought, and I may also have some flexibility with this, but I'm gonna say C. Again, I think that there is a lot going on here that's good. You've got that is the current tombs from 1926. President and Mrs. Taylor are in there. You have the original tomb that they were in from the 1850s until the 1920s there. There's also a monument to Taylor in a uniform for his military service, probably most prominently general during the Mexican-American War, controversial war, but not going to get into that. But it is kind of interesting that all this is in one place. It is free and accessible, so that's good. Now, the thing is, kind of a bummer for me, again, being somebody who likes to get literally as close as possible, is the doors were locked. I don't know if there's anybody with a key that you could say, hey, I want to get into President and Mrs. Taylor's mausoleum to stand right next to the joint sarcophagus there. But I don't know about that. It's also interesting because somebody who died in the 1850s, actually exactly in 1850, the tomb looks a bit more modern. Not something necessarily that you would associate with somebody who died in 1850. I don't think so. I think it's neoclassical. So. Nice in a lot of regards, and I could have some flexibility, but I'm initially saying C.
I think I'll disagree with you a little bit on this. I think I have to move him up to B. And the only reason I say that is because I agree with you on all the points that you made. The fact that you can't go inside, it does look a little bit more modern. This is kind of a faraway shot of the monument and the new tomb, and then you see in between them the old tomb. And then you can see on the screen here, there's the old tomb there. And then, of course, this is the back side of things. So that's the back side of the tomb, the present tomb, the side of the old tomb, and then the monument, the back side of it. And you also can see in this shot, it is called the Zachary Taylor National Cemetery because it's a military-style cemetery. So you see the military rows of the headstones here. I just think the whole thing, the whole cemetery itself, not overly big. Like you said, all three of these things being right there where you can get a shot like this. I got to move it up to a B, in my opinion. I thought it was pretty cool, I have to be honest.
All right, I'll acquiesce to that.
Okay, all right. So we're going to move good old rough and ready up to a B. And after we take a look here at General Zachary Taylor, now we're looking at a man who was the only president that had a different flag other than the United States American flag draped over his casket during his funeral procession. This man actually had a Confederate flag draped over his casket during his funeral procession. And that brings us right back to James Monroe's neighbor in Richmond, Virginia, John Tyler. So take it away there, Kurt.
Yeah, well, as you can see right there on the left, you got John Tyler's grave, and kind of a right center there, the picture TJ took of got Monroe's grave in there too. So that whole area is called President's Circle, and it is also even though you're just seeing the steps there, I believe there is, if you access another way, you can get up to Monroe's and right up close to Tyler's via a ramp. So it is very interesting. I have a lot of personal dislike for John Tyler, but again, trying to not overall take that into consideration here. The bust is pretty cool. The patina on it, I always like that kind of oxidation, the effect that weather and time has over the exposed metal there, kind of a haunting green. This isn't where he wanted to be buried, and again, I've got so much distaste for him with the Confederacy that I don't know if I care much about where he wants to be buried. But then also they kind of put him in this cemetery that a lot of prominent Confederates are in. Jefferson Davis is there, I believe. General Jeb Stuart might be there as well. I've not seen him. So it's almost kind of, I don't want to say a Confederate shrine in a sense, but I think Davis's certainly could be regarded as that. They got a lot of flags there, but anyway, I digress. That's a Confederacy and Tyler rant, but it's a cool looking grave, and again, they've done a lot there recently with the cobblestones and everything, and planting more trees, and I think I'm gonna go with a B.
A B, okay, yeah, I would agree there. Jefferson Davis was actually extremely instrumental on planning the entire funeral and funeral procession for John Tyler. So ironically enough, they ended up being buried right near one another. But that was an interesting fact that I had learned and read in the President is Dead book by Louis Picone. So
yeah, and this is pretty tall too, and this is from the 1900s. His grave wasn't marked at all for a while. Then it was just marked by a simple grave that actually I think had his death date wrong on it. So
yeah. And you see here through the trees, that's actually a river that's right next to where the cemetery is. Do you know the name of the river?
I can't recall off the top of my head, but it's a nice view.
It is. It's a beautiful view. You can literally see the river right from his gravesite, and it's a pretty roaring river, so you actually see it and hear it. So it's pretty. It is for somebody who was pretty not so much of a great person and not a good president whatsoever. It's quite spectacular. So yeah, I'll go B there.
And then we got a president who died the same year, up next, 1862.
Yes, tucked away in a roadside cemetery that you wouldn't think a president would ever be in. And that brings us to upstate New York, not far from Albany, kind of a neighbor of Albany, in Kinderhook, New York, taking a look at the 8th president of the United States, who is Martin Van Buren. So go ahead, Kurt, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, not a spectacular president, and again, he inherited a lot of stuff from Jackson with it was his policies that really affected the Panic of 1837, and then Van Buren also carried over Jackson's policies with the relocation of indigenous tribes, and the Cherokees on the Trail of Tears were actually moved in predominantly in 1838, which was Van Buren's presidency, him enforcing that, not. And so it wasn't just Jackson to blame for that. That's for sure. So So a really important politician in the two-party system, and really father of the Democratic Party, which back then was more so the conservative party of the time in a lot of ways, for incremental party switches. But yeah, he's not somebody who was a good president, and but him being buried in this cemetery is appropriate, and it is accessible. I mean, a few years ago, my dad, my friend Kelvis, and we were cutting back from Ohio. It was late at night, and I think we probably stopped there around like 10 at night, and we just walked over. So that we had to take Kelvis's pictures with the flash. So I've been there numerous times, and as compared to when I first went there, I can see your pictures. They've done a little bit more of trying to make it a little bit nicer. Some plants, a little, contained by a low stone wall, and because the inscription is so difficult to read, I think it looks like they've added a sign with the inscription there. But I'm gonna go with a D. I mean, it's especially if you're comparing it to other president graves. Not spectacular at all. But then again, maybe it shouldn't be. Maybe a D level grave is what is appropriate for Martin Van Buren.
All right. So this is maybe one of the only times that I'm going to overturn Kurt here in this grading system. I agree with everything that Kurt said. Not a good president. Just kind of went along with many of Andrew Jackson's policies. This is something, it's a roadside grave. There's not even a gate or any sort of fencing around the cemetery itself. You would never imagine that a U.S. president would be buried in this cemetery. But based on who he is and his presidency and just this underwhelming gravesite, I think we have to have our first F of the day. I think Martin Van Buren's gravesite actually deserves an F. Would you fight me on that, Kurt, or what?
No, I'm ready to move on to Lincoln.
Okay, perfect. And yes, now we go from all of these underwhelming ones to a man who is probably our most treasured, most revered president of all time. Many would say the greatest president we've ever had. And we go all the way to Springfield, Illinois, to the tomb of our 16th president of the United States, Abraham Lincoln. Go ahead, Kurt.
It's an A. I know. I'm very sure we're going to agree about that.
It's an A++ in my opinion. But go ahead, Kurt.
Well, let's not get into a Christmas Story type grading there. A++++ going off the wall. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of history there. You drive up the cemetery, Oak Ridge Cemetery, the drive. I was so excited at 9 years old. I actually hopped out of the rental vehicle to go walk because I didn't want to be constrained by my dad's driving. To get there. I wanted to see it with my own eyes, not through the glass. I was so excited. There's a lot going on here. This is when you walk right through the front door. There's Daniel Chester French's sitting Lincoln in miniature there. You typically go to the right, so you go counterclockwise through the hallways. There's different sculptures till you get to the tomb in the back. And so Lincoln is not in that. He is beneath the floor in a steel cage with 10 tons of concrete poured on him because some people might know there was a grave robbery attempt election night 1876. They broke into the original sarcophagus, the intended grave robbers. They actually did break it, and they had their hands on the coffin or the casket, and they had it halfway out before they got scared off. And there's too much going on here to talk about all the history of what happened with the tomb and everything, really, because we would really be here all night. There was that was the second vault there. So there's, if you go further downhill, was the first vault where Lincoln was there. And there's then the second one. And then there's the current one, which has been redone. That interior that we were looking at, I think that's like 1930. So really an Art Deco feel. So I would say that, as somebody who, due to a lot of influence from Batman, the animated series from the 90s, really loves Art Deco. The one thing, and so a lot of me loves this, and part of me is like, well, that's got nothing to do with Abraham Lincoln whatsoever, but that's kind of the style at the time when they last did a really big renovation on it. But then back above there, there's the quote allegedly said by Secretary of War Edwin Stanton. Now he belongs to the Ages. There's some dispute about whether or not he's Ages or Angels.
Yes.
Either one sounds good. The popular one is Ages. So I'm totally fine with that. But all being said, the obelisk outside is 100 feet tall. Now you see those steps there. At the time I went with my father in August 2004, you could actually go up there. Now I've read that I think there was a vandal that maybe damaged one of the statues of one of the veterans up there. So I think they have those blocked off now. So that was a cool experience, though, being able to go up to that deck, but I don't think anybody can do that anymore.
That is correct, Kurt. Yeah. So they definitely have that blocked off to the public. and it's due to engineering, worries, because yes, there was a vandal, and now apparently one of the statues is not exactly safe and sound, so to speak. So if they have people go up there and try to touch it or play with it, it might crumble or break even further. So they don't want anyone to get hurt, or of course the statues to be destroyed. So they block it all off.
And we should point out that a lot of people, including some notables, have rubbed that Lincoln's nose, and
you see the wear and tear on the nose. You guys can see it in this photo.
Yeah, I've seen a photo of candidate Ronald Reagan rubbing it in 1980 on the campaign trail. I think Kennedy might have gone there in '59, maybe. So, but I've definitely seen the photo of Reagan, and I think Goldwater also went there in '64.
And I might add that this face statue of Lincoln, the one that's rubbed all the time, his name escapes me, but it's actually the same man who designed Rushmore. Yes.
Yeah. Which that's a whole interesting story there that we don't have time to get into, but look him up sometime.
Yeah.
But interesting dynamic. I'll just say that.
So my little tidbit here, I will just tell you, I agree with everything that Kurt said. My experience, just briefly to tell everyone, another unique experience. Please do not think that you will automatically get an experience like this visiting Lincoln's tomb. I went there last year during COVID. Their apparently last tour of the day, and I use that with air quotes, was at 4 p.m. I got there at 3:45. I signed up for the last tour. There was only a couple of groups of people, and they were all families, with groups of 3 or 4. They were only allowing a few people in the tomb at a time due to social distancing and COVID. And long story short, it wasn't really a tour. The tour guide talked to us outside of the tomb, told us some fun facts. But basically, you walked inside the tomb to take a look yourself. And I was the last person left of the day because I was the only solo one there. And the tour guide looked at me at the front entranceway and said, "Go on inside and enjoy it. This is something most people do not get, is to walk into this tomb by themselves." And I remember walking down the marble hallway, and even though I had sneakers on, I could literally hear my sneakers clacking against the marble floor, and the hairs on my arm started to stand up. And I turned the corner, and there is what you're seeing on your screen, the tomb of Abraham Lincoln. It was quite spectacular. It's just something I'll never forget. And it is an A+ all the way. Just a tremendous tomb for a very tremendous person and probably our greatest president ever. So very fitting. So now moving on from good old Mr. Lincoln, we go to his predecessor in office, a man who's sometimes noted as one of the worst presidents we've ever had. And we go to small town Lancaster, Pennsylvania, my neighboring state here in New Jersey, good old Pennsylvania, the Keystone State. And we take a look at our 15th president of the United States, James Buchanan. Go ahead, Kurt.
I'm going to go with a D for Buchanan here. I mean, terrible president. Okay with the Dred Scott Supreme Court decision. Not doing anything as the country went toward a civil war over the slavery debates, whether or not it should be extended or all that. Just not a good president whatsoever, in really any regard overall. The grave, I think he doesn't deserve much anything more than this. If you're talking about where he stands in the pantheon of presidents, it does say that he was president. So I in a sense, I'm like, okay, that's appropriate. Maybe that's all he deserves, just to say the title on there. If he had anything like super lofty, I don't think that would sit well with me, because I think it would come off as disingenuous. Now his plot is fairly well taken care of. Some of the graves immediately surrounding it the first time I went were like knocked over. When I went back for a second time in 2013, I think they had done some repairs, but it's marble monument on a granite base. I think nothing too spectacular. Don't think he deserves much of anything spectacular. It's free though, and I imagine it's very commonly accessible throughout the year, and you can get pretty much right up to it, even if you have a disability. But I'm going to go with a D.
I agree. I would even argue you could probably go an F, but I'll stay with you on a D. The cemetery itself is not too bad anymore. It seems to be pretty cleaned up now. It's quite underwhelming, but quite deservedly so, as you had pointed out, Kurt. So.
Yep, and if you're in Lancaster, go see maybe Thaddeus Stevens.
Yes, absolutely. Thaddeus Stevens is in Lancaster. Very, 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 very.
Yeah,
very
different
cool.
cemetery, but somebody with a better historical record, let's say, than
very true.
Buchanan. But
and we go from Buchanan all the way up to the northeast to a state not too far from Kurt, up there in New Hampshire. Concord, New Hampshire. Am I correct, Kurt? Is that the town?
Yep, Concord, the capital city of
New Hampshire. And we go to another president who is not a very good president. And we take a look at Mr. Franklin Pierce's resting place. So take it away there, Kurt.
Yep, not regarded as a good president in the recent C-SPAN survey. If you look at the overall points, I think he and Donald Trump were technically tied toward the bottom, but they still I don't know how they decided it, but Trump still ranked above him, and then followed by Andrew Johnson and James Buchanan very last. Again, so you've got the three bottom presidents there associated with either the antebellum approaching Civil War period or immediately after with Andrew Johnson. So not a good president. Grave, I mean, it's a little bit interesting, but again, nothing too spectacular. I would say it's better than his original grave, which I believe said Francis Pierce on it. I think I read that in Louis Picone's book, and that was not his name. So they probably thought just, Frank Pierce, and they thought it was short for Francis instead of Franklin, but that was incorrect. It does have a little bit going on, and they do a decent job keeping up the plot there. But again, nothing too spectacular. But once again, does he deserve much of anything spectacular? It's free, and you can go there 365 days a year, and should have no problem getting up there. But I'm gonna go with a D.
Okay. I mean, I'll go with a D as well. I think you could even argue F, but it's not terrible. It is well kept. I believe it was the state of New Hampshire for a long time. They didn't even want to recognize him as president, so it didn't even say 14th president of the United States on his grave for quite some time. So some interesting just things surrounding his gravesite there. I'll agree with you on D. And now, we go from one northeast cold climate to possibly one of the coldest northeast climates in our country, all the way up to Buffalo, New York, right near Niagara Falls, to take a look at Mr. Millard Fillmore. So there you go, Kurt. Take it away.
My third time there, I think what it was 5 years ago. It was on his birthday, January 7th, 2016. I was there with my dad and my friend Kelvis, and we met a fellow grave hunter there who I have a connection with now. So I can say that was in the snow, and it wasn't snowing, but there was snow, and it was cold, but it was a good ceremony. He did a lot of good and philanthropy for the city of Buffalo, as opposed to, I would say, his not good presidency overall. Again, not everything was bad. He's certainly better than some of the other presidents that we were just discussing. Now, this is a gorgeous cemetery.
Yeah.
His Forest Lawn Cemetery in Buffalo, it is he doesn't have anywhere close to the most spectacular grave there, though.
No,
There's
no,
this
he does
family,
not.
the
I mean, you have to,
Blocher family.
Yes, yes.
Marble statues, Blocher. Look that up later. The Blokers, Nelson Blocher,
Yes,
Forest Lawn, Buffalo. But all the same, this is the place to be in Buffalo, and I believe he's buried right near his other law partners, actually.
Mm-hmm.
One of whom I'm kicking myself for not going right up to the grave, because now I want to, because I think he was in Fillmore's cabinet too. So now I'm trying to get cabinet members. So I've been right near him 3 times, and I've skipped him. But it's a nice looking stone. I just think that it's difficult to read the inscription.
It is very
is a big downfall. Now there is at least the plaque there, and he does have an individual marker. So at the time you went, there's no shrubbery there. Sometimes they have shrubbery, and I guess other times they don't. So the first time I went in June 2005, I actually had to hold back the shrubbery a little bit to better see, so the individual marker could be captured in the picture. But I'm gonna go with a C on this one. Again, definitely it's good points, and it's got a great environment, but not totally outstanding either.
I agree with you. I would say C. I liked it. I thought it was pretty cool, but it wasn't anything that I was like, oh, wow. As you said, the cemetery itself and several other graves inside that cemetery are much more spectacular than President Fillmore's. So I will agree, and we can put him at C.
My most liked Instagram post thus far was, and you never know what's going to be a hit or not. I only got a couple that ever gotten maybe over 150. Usually I range to maybe like 60 or 70. If I have a pretty good day. But a few weeks ago, I posted singer Rick James is buried there, and I crested 200. Everybody was loving Rick James. So his actually has an image of him on it. So even, I mean, as you would expect, though, the super freak is outshining Millard Fillmore.
Yes.
Then again, who wouldn't?
Yeah, of course, right?
But, all right, and Andrew Johnson?
Yes, now we move on to probably the worst president in the history of our country, or debatably. Out to Tennessee again, Greenville, Tennessee. And we take a look at our 17th president, President Andrew Johnson. So go ahead, Kurt.
Andrew Johnson, F. President, A. grave. Yeah, this is a pretty cool grave, in my opinion. I mean, it's 27 feet tall. I believe those photos, I can just tell that you took them, as opposed to early on. If I'm not in them, it was over on my father taking them. I really kind of took over in like 2009 once I got my website, as far as, I want these extra photos and everything. So, overall, most of the photos early on, it's just me in there, but I can just tell that it looks like it's been restored a bit from when I went there. Just looks, the stone looks cleaner, so that's also good to see. I mean, you get the eagle up top. I mean, look at the detail on that. The hand on what I believe is supposed to be a Bible. Those fences are hoppable if you're up for that. I think in the slideshow earlier and what you'll show at the end again, I think. I got over there, no problem. I have a very interesting story of when I first went there, but I'm gonna save that for my memoir that I hope I can get published. So, just a little interesting anecdote of the first time I went there. That's
I'm fixing it. We said B for William Henry, D for
and gotta go up to A. There we go. I mean, he's buried, wrapped in American flag, his head resting on the Constitution. Now, I think he and I have very, very, very drastically different interpretations of the Constitution, but I'll say that the symbolism, at least, is there, and very interesting. Again, terrible, awful president. I think historian Eric Foner would say probably our most racist president, and he really was not good in almost any regard whatsoever with his presidency. but a heck of a grave. And he personally picked that spot. That I believe that was part of his property at one time. It's up on a hill there, and just standing at the entrance, you look up and you can see it there on the hill from the cemetery.
It truly is
pretty
beautiful.
Cool.
It is, and you're right. Doesn't deserve this, but it is spectacular. So even trying to deduct some points for the fact that it's too much of a beautiful memorial for somebody who was such a bad president and not such a great person. It's too much, in my opinion. But even when you deduct points from that, you still have to give it an A grade. I agree with you. Just so everybody knows, not only does it sit up on this hill, but if you kind of walk over to the side of it, there's views of the mountains in Tennessee from up top there, and it's just spectacular. It really is beautiful.
And it is free to get to.
Yes.
I can't remember off the top of my head how accessible it is.
I think it is closed, though. I think there is only certain hours that the actual gates are open, though, that you can go up.
And I mean, just even say you can't walk up the steps. I can't remember if there's a way. There might be a way to drive up pretty close to it. Yeah. I think maybe at least part way up the hill. But all the same, just visually, it's an A.
Yeah. Very cool. And now we go to a spectacular memorial in Cleveland, Ohio, as we take a look at one of my favorite presidents, Mr. James Garfield. So, Kurt, take this away. There you are outside of the Garfield Memorial and Tomb, so take it away.
Yeah, wearing my Red Sox 2004 champions shirt. So this was June 2005. I was 10 years old there. This is 180 feet tall, yes. The tomb of the Garfields. And I got right up. That is his casket. He's not in a sarcophagus, containing the casket. He's not buried. If you flipped that lid open, there would be President James Garfield, and then the neighboring casket would be Mrs. Lucretia Garfield. I mean, I didn't have enough pictures of the interior to contribute to this because I've only been once, and so I got to blame my father for not taking enough pictures of the statues and everything. But it's gorgeous in there.
Oh, Kurt, is it okay if I interject here real quick and surprise you and the crowd real quick? Everyone, take a quick look at this.
Hey guys, TJ here with Dead History, and I'll show you guys where I'm at. Let me flip you around. So I am actually in the crypt of President James Garfield. That is his casket right there with the American flag on it, and his wife right next to him. Here at Lakeview Cemetery in Cleveland, Ohio. So there you go.
When was this?
This was yesterday, ladies and gentlemen. I drove to Cleveland, Ohio, so I could finally go inside and see the tomb of James Garfield. And now you are seeing the photos that I took yesterday in Cleveland, Ohio at the Lakeview Cemetery of President Garfield's amazing, truly spectacular, beautiful tomb there at Lakeview Cemetery. That's the statue as soon as you walk in.
Italian marble. Look at the chandelier over it. This is of the not just presidents. This is my favorite grave I've ever been to of all time.
Yes. I didn't tell Kurt I was going. Here's a panoramic view of that room with the statue. I didn't tell Kurt I was going. Just so everyone knows about accessibility, this is actually only open this time of the year from Thursday through Sunday. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, it is closed to the public. So I decided to leave my house at 3 o'clock in the morning yesterday morning. I drove 7.5 hours to Cleveland, Ohio. I saw the tomb of President Garfield. I saw a couple other graves that Kurt, you and I will talk about later on once we're done with this. And then, of course, I drove back. So it was a 3 a.m. till about 10 p.m. day for me, but extremely well worth it. Unfortunately, I did not get to go up to the casket because those gates are locked. like Kurt did. He was very fortunate. But this is what it looks like. And everything you're seeing here on your screen was just taken yesterday. And it's spectacular. I echo everything that Kurt is saying about this tomb and this memorial. So, Kurt,
a lot better lit now than in 2005 too.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that's cool.
Here's my silly photos, selfies with everything.
You're, as my dad says, you're like an eco-terrorist. You're single-handedly destroying the ozone with all your driving.
His dad always picks on me for these long drives. I get it, but hey, here's a panoramic view of the outside that I took yesterday.
And now they've restored it a bit too. So I didn't realize, when I first went when I was 10, like if you look at the photo that my dad took of me in front of it there, so that's all like grime from Cleveland's industry over the years. And now it's actually been restored to more that lighter color is what everything is supposed to be overall. So it's like Berea sandstone. Again, that's 180 feet tall. There's like 3 decks. There's gargoyles. There's, it's absolutely phenomenal, and I'm really glad that you got to finally go in it. I know you were bumming that you couldn't go originally in time for when your videos were coming out, but that's cool that you got to go in there. So
absolutely.
favorite grave of all time, and I don't know if it'll ever be topped for me.
Yeah, I think it goes without saying. We didn't actually even say it out loud, but folks, this may be the best one. I'm not trying to give spoilers away for the rest, but this is just spectacular. It's top of the list in my opinion, and I think that Kurt echoes my sentiments there. So, so there was my little surprise for everyone. I was there yesterday. Finally got to go inside and see President Garfield.
Very cool.
Now we move on to the president that's buried real close to me, right there in Manhattan, right along River Avenue. And we take a look at General Ulysses S. Grant at Grant's tomb. Who is buried there in Grant's tomb? Kurt, why don't you tell us?
Well, Ulysses and Julia Grant are entombed in Grant's tomb. They're not buried beneath any dirt or anything, I guess, if you want to get really technical. But General and Mrs. Grant, they're Riverside Park. This is, by square footage, this is the largest mausoleum on the entire continent in North America. So even though I don't think it's as tall as the Garfield tomb, this also goes down into the crypt, and you have this whole plaza here. So this is the largest mausoleum in the entire continent. Those eagles that flank the entranceway there, those are actually originally they're from a post office that closed. Cool. So those are subsequent additions, which I think fit really well there. Yeah, there I am wearing my Reagan shirt from I got from when I saw him Lion State in Washington D.C. at a souvenir shop there. They weren't like handing those out in line at the Capitol, but so there's another very interesting story with this that I'm also going to save for another time. But all I'll say is this picture should not have happened. Is what I'll say. So, but I'm 9 years old there. I think this was my 10th president grave, August 2004, and so those are the sarcophagi of Julia and Ulysses Grant. They're surrounded down there by busts of different Union generals, and not necessarily the ones that you would think of, like McClellan, I think, or Burnside. I think it's like Ord is one of them, and so maybe some generals that, to be honest, I don't know much of anything about a lot of them. But I'm gonna give this one a B. I think a lot of people give it an A. I think one thing going against it is it also, like the Harrison tomb, has a lot of trouble with upkeep, and I know they're always fighting for funds. And there's just deterioration there, and the president of the Grant Memorial Association, Frank Scatura, I know he's always advocating get more funds there, and unfortunately, it's just a place that always has a lot of problems with that. I think so. For that reason, well, in a lot of ways, it's very spectacular, and one of the most famous president graves, and definitely a Manhattan landmark. I'm going to go with a B due to its current situation.
Yeah, I agree with you on the there was vandalism years ago, back in the 70s and 80s. I mean, they had graffiti all over the actual building. So pretty bad stuff. They definitely have cleaned it up since. I kind of I don't know if is this maybe your Boston Red Sox hatred for the New York and the Yankees coming through a little bit, because I think
I can separate boroughs, the Bronx and Manhattan. I can separate, the Mets are in Queens.
I have to I feel like I almost have to override. I think I have to put it at A. I just feel like it's so spectacular. It is such I mean, you can see it from a mile away when you're driving up the road. It's unbelievable. It truly is a landmark.
I'll acquiesce to that. Again,
right.
if the upkeep were constant and they were able to get all the funding constantly and everything, and were in pristine condition, I would say there'd be no question.
Yes.
It's an A. But I'll tell you what, I'll in my head I'll give it a 90 overall instead of like an 89. So it's like just on the borderline, but I'll give it an A.
So we'll go with the A. Good stuff. Now we move a little further up north in the state of New York, and we take a look. It's Menands. Isn't that the name of the town, Menands?
Yeah, Menands. I was told that pronunciation by some people who live either there or right near there, for some people who came to tour the Adams graves in Quincy.
Very cool.
So I was telling them how Quincy was pronounced, and they were telling me how Menands was pronounced.
That's really cool. I love it. So in Menands, New York, which is actually the isn't it called the Albany Rural Cemetery? Am I correct?
So a lot of people also think it's just in Albany proper, but it technically isn't.
It's not. Yep. And we take a look at our 21st president of the United States, Mr. Chester Arthur. So there you go, Kurt. Take it away.
Yeah. Another weird pronunciation is middle name Alan, which I know in your video you took that C-SPAN clip and put that in there. So that's how it is. Chester Alan Arthur, not Alan. Not that. But very cool grave. Again, I have a special place in my heart for that patina. Just like it would be on the Statue of Liberty there, the angel in mourning with the palm front, the American flags right there, pretty good too. The wings 6 feet tall. Now, one downside for me, and it's just the circumstances, is that he's not in that sarcophagus. This was a later addition, so he is buried beneath it. So unlike George Washington, who's in the sarcophagus, Arthur's not. But all the same, I'm a big fan of this one. I'm giving it an A. The one other detraction for me is, although it also does make it a little bit personal, is that on the plaque there, his birth year is wrong. But he himself used to give the incorrect birth year because he wanted to appear slightly younger. So instead of 1829, he gave it as 1830, and that's what it says there. It is kind of that psychological thing, like it's not $20, it's $19.99. That 1 year was going to make him.
Make a difference.
But it's the decades, the 1820s or the 1830s. So
yes. So I will. I'll keep him at A. I would probably put him more as a B. I think it is awesome and spectacular, really cool looking. Not something that I would. I'll go with a B. I'll go with a B there.
All right, So I'll tell you what. I gave you Grant. You give me Arthur.
Deal. There you go. Okay. There you go. It's a good trade off. And now we move to one. Spiegel Grove, there in Ohio. Spiegel Grove was the homestead there of Rutherford B. Hayes, and we take a look at his grave. So, Kurt, why don't you take that away for us?
Yeah, I think Joe Fakosh of Visiting the Presidents, his podcast, has an affinity for this one. I think he worked there. I believe he said. I don't want to get into too much more detail because I don't want to inaccurately tell his story there. But Spiegel Grove. President and Mrs. Hayes are there. Lemonade Lucy, she's nicknamed, although there's a complicated history with that nickname, and it was actually, I believe, the president himself who prohibited alcohol consumption there. But this is their grave, and this is the appropriate place for them to be buried. They were originally interred in a nearby cemetery, but when the presidential library opened up there in the 19-teens, they relocated Rutherford and Lucy Hayes. It's a very, like, compared to a lot of the other president graves, it's not large, but that thing weighs a lot. You know that's definitely very solid, and it's actually made of stone that comes from his ancestors' property in Vermont. So that's a nice personal touch there, and I'm gonna go with a C again. I think it accomplishes what it needs to do. It's good that it's there property wise. I'm pretty sure that you can get there pretty much all year round.
Yes.
You might be able to go to the grave without paying to get into the home or the library, but don't quote me on that. But
well, I didn't pay.
There you go.
Yeah, you can just walk the path. This is one, I'll keep him at C, but I will be honest with you, I would have put him personally at B, only because I really surprisingly enjoyed this gravesite. And the reason being, I'm such a nature person, outdoors person. I thought the walk there, and then all these beautiful big like pine trees and, all these evergreens around, I thought it was just really pretty. A lot of nature right by it. Very quiet, secluded spot there on the property. So I really, really enjoyed it. If we're going to keep
the
them
squirrels are really rambunctious there.
Yes. If we're keeping them at C, I think it's a pretty high C. It's almost on a B tier, but we'll keep
I can live with that, but I think I want to keep him C.
Yeah, no problem. I understand. Now we're moving on to probably the biggest cemetery I've ever been in, or one of them at least, in Indianapolis, Indiana, and taking a look at Mr. Benjamin Harrison. Take it away there, Kurt.
Yeah, I've been there once. It was actually his birthday, August 20th, 2004. So this was earlier in the day before my dad and I went to Lincoln's tomb. So it drove across Indiana and in Illinois to get there. I think you're actually capturing there. I think that's in the background is the mausoleum maybe of author Booth Tarkington. It's there. John Dillinger's there. There's 3 vice presidents. I believe the guy who created the Gatling gun is there. And I also learned, it might have been through you, that Bob Irsay's there.
Right? I mean, literally within probably 40 yards of Harrison. Yes, he's right near there. Yes.
That's good you're using football terms. But Benjamin Harrison's there. I mean, he picked out the spot, I think, and also the stone, because he was predeceased by his wife, Mrs. Harrison, the First Lady. And she was one of the few first ladies who died when her husband was in office there, Caroline Harrison. There's not too much spectacular here. When I went, it was surrounded by shrubs, not so much when you went. So you can see the landscaping around these can change a lot, even in 10, 15 years. But, man, I think I'm gonna settle. I think I'm initially gonna say a C, but if you want to go lower with it, I
gotta go right here, man. I gotta go D.
Okay.
I thought this was just extremely underwhelming. I thought this was just very bland. I got, again, one of these circumstances where I got more enjoyment out of the cemetery and several of its residents in the cemetery, much more than I did President Benjamin Harrison's gravesite. So yeah. I think we got to just leave them there at D.
Okay, cool.
And now we move on to one of the most spectacular, at least aesthetically, memorials. They're still in, now we're going back to the state of Ohio, Canton, Ohio, and we're taking a look at President William McKinley, which, there you go. It looks like the steps that Rocky would have ran up in the movie Rocky. So there you go. Take it away, Kurt.
Yeah, so also there's this company, Cat's Meow Village, and they make different houses. You can also do custom ones, but they have pre-made ones. So I bought on their website. They make the McKinley Tomb in
Yeah.
Canton, Ohio, right near the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So
Yeah, within about I don't even think it's 3 to 4 miles away. Very close. Correct.
yeah, I mean, very cool. Kind of looks like an observatory, almost up on the hill. We've got a statue of McKinley there. When I first went, there used to be a fence around it. Oh, skipping ahead a little bit. So there's the statue there. There used to be a fence around it when I first went. But I guess not when you went. There's 108 steps, and you can bet I was counting. I was 10 years old. Father's Day 2005, and my dad was away. I posted the video on Instagram. It would have been last year, I think Father's Day, and he's hundreds and hundreds of feet away, zooming in on me. He's like, "I bet you he's counting the steps," and he was right. I was off by one. I counted 107. It was 108. Yeah, I mean, you go inside there, and it's not like the Lincoln Tomb where there's the entryway and then you go walk around the back or anything, or Garfield where you have to go down the stairs. And I don't know, I can't remember if there's an elevator to get down to the crypt at Garfield's, but you go anyway, you go in there, and this looks like you took it right going in the door. I mean, they're right there, smack dab in the middle. That's it. They're green, almost black looking sarcophagi right there. There's a quote of McKinley's that wraps around there that's basically about peace, which is interesting for a president who presided over an interesting war and imperialism. But now something that would have been really cool to see in its heyday is that from an aerial view, the tomb would be situated on the hilt of a giant sword. There used to be a big reflecting pool in front of it. It used to be like the blade of the sword. Now I think it's all filled in with grass. So overall, I think the general shape is still there, but it looked a lot more like it back in its heyday. But I think this is certainly an A, in my opinion. I think this is very interesting, and he was an assassinated president, and overall, assassinated presidents, 3 out of 4 definitely have giant graves, and you could say that, all 4 of them have interesting and moving graves.
Yeah, and one thing I did want to show is it actually touches this cemetery where this is actually touches up to the grounds of the McKinley Memorial there in Canton, and that's here. This was the receiving vault and holding vault that William McKinley was originally at, and this cemetery literally, I mean, the edge of it touches where the McKinley Memorial is at. So that's where McKinley originally was, and he only got moved about maybe 200 yards, 300 yards away, pretty close in proximity. So I agree. I give it an A. Absolutely phenomenal. I just was able to go back there a few months ago and see it again inside, and it was just tremendous. So,
and this is free.
Yes, it is.
To get to. I can't say anything off the top of my head. Admittedly hadn't done the research about the hours of how many days a year it's open, and I can't recall if there's a way to get to the top of it. There, what there has to be, because I know there's an elevator inside of it, so there has to be a way where it's handicap accessible to get to
it. And that's the other thing. It is not open all the time. In fact, I think it's closed on Sundays or something like that too. So
Canton football.
There you go. Good call. So there you go. So it is not 365 days a year always accessible. Yeah. And now we move on to my one close to my heart, only about 35 minutes away from my home. New Jersey native, good old Grover Cleveland, and his extremely sad, underwhelming grave. Take it away, Kurt.
Certain Instagram accounts would say Grover Cleveland is the most average president, and that argument could be made. The Grover Cleveland Art Society. However, in terms of gravesites, I would disagree there, and I'm gonna say toward the bottom of presidential graves, I'm just gonna go with a D for Cleveland here. I think it's a little bit interesting. He's got this kind of ornamental urn up top. It has definitely been cleaned from the second time I went in 2010, and I think these are your photos.
Yes, they are. Yep.
From last year, so a lot cleaner than when I first went in June 2004. But not a whole lot going on there. I think one of the nicer things is occasional tributes from Native Hawaiians who to this day continue to like Cleveland for his support of their sovereignty and not wanting to annex it, like Benjamin Harrison and William McKinley tried to and then did. So you can see that there, kind of left on the ledge there. So that's a nice tribute there. But that's kind of also the same as Three Stooges fans leaving stones that say "nyuk nyuk nyuk." It's a nice added thing that the visitors do, but it's not ingrained into the grave itself per se. I'm kind of at a D. So okay. Sorry to Louis Picone and the Grover Cleveland Art Society.
So here we go. It does not even say President of the United States anywhere on his gravesite. It doesn't even have the presidential symbol or emblem. I'm harsh on this. I got to override you. He's one of those I have to put down here an F. And the reason I have to is because it's extremely underwhelming. I mean, you already have him at D. Being a New Jersey native, it's a little embarrassing, to be honest with you. Because it's the only president from here, really, and the only one buried here. And you go there and you're like, this is it? It doesn't even say President of the United States on it. So I have to put him, not a very good man. He was a man of integrity. Average president, yes, but a man of integrity. But he's got to be F because it's extremely underwhelming to me. So what do you
I can live with that for sure. So.
Okay. All right, and now we're going to move on to a very popular president there in Oyster Bay, Long Island, home of the musician Billy Joel, and we take a look at Teddy Roosevelt. So take it away.
Oyster Bay's the home of Billy Joel?
Yeah, Oyster Bay, that's where he's from, yes.
Oh, I have no idea.
Yes. The Billy the Kid song, when he is writing his song about Billy the Kid, at the end, he says, from a town known as Oyster Bay, Long Island. That is where he was born and raised. So,
I don't think I've heard that one, so I'll look it up afterward. This is a pretty interesting one. Not a whole lot going on, but all the same. So there are 26 steps that lead up to the gravesite there, kind of gated off, and Theodore Roosevelt, who, by the way, he hated Teddy. So when I saw that in the slideshow you had earlier, I was like, oh, he would be mad at you, TJ.
Yes, he would.
But so I was Theodore Roosevelt. So 26th president, 26 steps going up to the grave. There's this little bricked off area there. There's a quote of his that's on a plaque on a rock right by the gate. And then he's interred there with his second wife, First Lady Edith Roosevelt. And it does have, I believe, the presidential seal there. It's got a nice view.
That is Oyster Bay right there. So you can see that view of Oyster Bay from his gravesite.
Yep. So this is free, but one downside is that the gate is usually locked. Now, when my family and I went, my mother, on the spur of the moment, was able to get the caretaker at the time there, Nick Labella, and he's since passed away. I looked. I did. For people wondering, how do you know that like these people passed away? Because when I was doing some research for my writing, I was trying to look some stuff up, and then unfortunately, in the cases of Nick Labella and Terry Myers, their obits came up. But so he was very passionate about Theodore Roosevelt. He actually died of a heart attack in 2011. Giving people a tour of this grave. So he was literally doing it till his dying moment, telling people about Theodore Roosevelt. So he got, it was kind of funny, like President Reagan's on my shirt there trying to read Theodore and Edith's inscription. So it is possible to get in there. You just have to maybe you either have to be really lucky that somebody's going to be there with the key to get you in, or maybe contact somebody in advance.
Yeah, or grease the wheels a little bit. I get it.
Yeah.
So what do you think? This is one I've actually visited a couple times. Where are we going to put him at?
Well, this is right near his home. This is at a place where he liked to listen to the bird song, I believe is what the author, I think it was Edmund Morris, said. So I'm going to go with a B. I think that while there's not a lot going on, I think he's very much in nature. He was a big fan of nature. Killed a lot of animals, but he had his late 1800s, early 1900s reasons, I guess I would say, and but he liked to be there, listen to the bird song, 26 steps, 26 presidential seal. I think it's a fitting place, so I'm B.
I agree with you. I think I'm going to agree with you. Nothing more to say. It's a cool place. Go check it out. Now we take a look at another unbelievably, overwhelmingly spectacular memorial in Ohio again, taking a look at Warren Harding. So take it away, Kurt.
Yeah, this is very large here. I know it's kind of tough to get the scale here exactly in this picture, but this is a tall monument, open courtyard there, circular. I believe it's Georgian marble that it's made out of. A lot of school children contributed pennies to this. Now, Warren Harding, usually not regarded as a good president. He was more so popular at the time of his death. Also, dying in office helps a little bit with your popularity. People feel bad for you. And a lot of the bad stuff, like the Teapot Dome scandal and a lot of the corruption that was going on within members of his administration and their dealings, that wasn't really overall very public at the time of his death. So that kind of explains the discrepancy there. But he wanted, I think he wanted to be buried outdoors, but they also wanted to give him this big monument. And I think this was kind of a compromise, this open air monument, if you will. And if you contact somebody in advance, you can get in there. So I believe it was Melinda Gilpin worked there at the time, was the person in charge of, I think, the home there, the Harding home and the gravesite. She let my father and myself in 2005. And there's Warren Harding there on the left, so Florence Harding, the first lady, on the right. And I think this is an A. Again, I will admit, doesn't really match with who this president is necessarily, but I mean, this is just phenomenal. What are you going to say?
Yeah, I agree with you. It does not deserve it. As a matter of fact, in my question and answer video I just released yesterday, one of our questions was, who's the president who has the grave they don't deserve, and who's the one that has a grave that maybe they deserve better? And my answer for the one that they don't deserve was actually Warren Harding. It's spectacular, and it really is amazing, but probably not deservedly so. But I agree with you. We're definitely an A tier. And now we're going to move on to another one who's associated with my home state of New Jersey, not born here, not from here, but associated with it. He was the president of Princeton University, and the only president buried in the District of Columbia in Washington, D.C., and that would be President Woodrow Wilson at the National Cathedral. So take it away, Kurt.
Yeah, National Cathedral, Woodrow Wilson there with his second First Lady, Edith Wilson. Ellen Wilson is interred in Georgia. I've not been to her grave yet, but I think you have, Ellen Wilson.
Yes.
Very interesting place. I mean, this is I remember watching a program, I mean, it was probably around 2003, 2004, about the cathedral, at least partially about the cathedral and all the Easter eggs and the gargoyles. So this is a president grave that technically the same building has a president grave and or I guess maybe it's a grotesque rather. Or there's a difference between gargoyles and grotesque. I can't remember. Yeah. I think one has to do with actually funneling water out, and the one is just a statue. But a president grave and a Darth Vader sculpture.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
yes,
and I think maybe
the force is strong with this one. So
yeah, the force was not necessarily strong with Woodrow Wilson, though. Definitely not good at persuading people to join the League of Nations.
Yes.
So if you go in the cathedral there, he's in the Wilson Bay, and that's kind of on the right hand side. So he's not a central part of this cathedral. I mean, this is an active place of worship. Many events happen here. Presidential funerals have been here. So these photos are from my second visit in 2015. But when I first went in 2004 with my father, we were actually here. We were there literally the day after Ronald Reagan's funeral, and the flowers were so that day, 24 hours earlier, all the President George W. Bush was sitting there speaking there. All those VIPs were all there for Ronald Reagan's funeral. The very next day, my father and I are there, and I'm wearing my Reagan shirt. So Woodrow Wilson, his father, was a minister, and he's got the Crusaders cross there on top of his sarcophagus. Pretty fitting. Kind of a bummer that Mrs. Wilson, there's a note kind of toward the right side there. It's like she's interred in the bay beneath this floor, which does have a presidential seal on it. So that's a nice touch, but not very egalitarian there. She doesn't get she doesn't get her own sarcophagus like that. You can just kind of on the right side kind of see a little bit. I know it's dark, but there's an inscription saying, she's there. Yeah, that's where it is. Definitely a president who his good points, his bad points, but the bad points are definitely being amplified recently for good reason. I think, in my opinion.
Yes, I agree with you.
But he did do some good things as well. But definitely a complicated presidency, maybe not as purely good as certain segments of the population thought for a good number of years. But I'm gonna go with a B on this one. I mean, this is a very spectacular building. But he's off to the side again. Debate, maybe again where we're talking about not such in some ways a good president or the best human being. Maybe he doesn't deserve to be the center of attention at the Washington National Cathedral. But it's a very elegant building. And while you're there, go visit Helen Keller and Anne Sullivan and. Think of Matthew Shepard, and there's other people see there too at the National Cathedral.
Absolutely, I'm going to agree with you on B, just because the building itself is just truly spectacular. It is pretty cool, not really deservedly so. I don't think regarding Wilson, but definitely cool. So we're going to definitely keep him at B. And now we move on to the first president that was ever buried in Arlington National Cemetery. And the man who not even the tour bus at Arlington National Cemetery makes a stop at this president's gravesite, nor do they even mention it when they pass by the gravesite. And I know this for a fact because I've taken the tour before, and just recently when I was there, I was at his gravesite, and I listened as the tour bus went by, and there was not a mention, because you can hear it, it's an open bus and speaker, not even a mention of this gentleman's name, and that is President and Supreme Court Justice William Howard Taft. So take it away, Kurt.
Yeah, and again, just the kind of the disparity there. I think one of our fellow grave hunters who has an Instagram account, I think he actually just got engaged at the Washington National Cathedral. So definitely
very cool,
gorgeous place there for a lot of purposes. Probably not many people getting engaged at William Howard Taft's grave, but also it's Arlington National Cemetery, so maybe not the most appropriate place to do so. But it's definitely an interesting looking sculpture. So this is by James Earl Fraser, sculptor, who actually, I believe he created the statues that flank the steps to the Supreme Court building, which also William Howard Taft was instrumental in having built. The Supreme Court used to be crammed into the U.S. Capitol until Taft was like, let's get some funds for that. So same sculptor did this, and I mean, there's a lot of detail up top there. A little bit hard to read depending on the angle with the gold lettering, but it it does look very like royal and important with the gold lettering there. But like you said, kind of very much short shrift there. So I'm gonna say C. It's small. It's got some interesting stuff. He's got a whole walk to himself, other than of course Mrs. Taft, Helen Taft there. But I'm gonna go C.
I agree with you. Underwhelming, not bad, but definitely second fiddle there at Arlington National Cemetery. And we're going to be getting to the main attraction, so to speak, at Arlington here in a few minutes. But now we take our travels up to Plymouth Notch, Vermont, in the mountains of Vermont, the picturesque mountains of Vermont. And we take a look at Mr. Calvin Coolidge at his roadside grave. Take it away, Kurt.
Well, this is another one that I've actually been to only once, and it was 2007. And unfortunately, I'm not going to get into the details, but it wasn't the most pleasant family trip that I've ever been on. And for that, I really kind of just wanted to get out of there overall. So I know it was just a whole gorgeous area, very bucolic, the whole preserved town there. And this is definitely the appropriate place for Coolidge to be. And next time when I go, maybe I'll go next year. July 4th will be the 150th anniversary of his birth. I'm sure that between Independence Day, his birthday, and it being his 150th birthday, I'm sure there's going to be something spectacular there, or at least as spectacular as you can feel appropriate doing for Calvin Coolidge.
Yeah.
So hopefully COVID is definitely more under control than it is now at that point, and be a good place to go at that time. Again, appropriate place for him to be. He was born nearby. He was sworn in as president in his father's homestead nearby. Many generations of Coolidges interred right here in this cemetery.
About a mile and a half up the road from where this picture on the screen's taken, Kurt, actually looking in the direction there, maybe a mile and a half, tops 2 miles up the road is where he was born, and where he was also sworn in by his father right up the road there. So yeah, you're correct right there.
Yeah, and I think there's at least 7 generations of Coolidges buried there. There could be more now, but I think there's at least 7. I mean, it's a nice looking stone. The presidential seal. It's always very clean. Sometimes you see maybe Theodore Roosevelt's gets a little dirty, or Cleveland's could get a little dirty, but I've never seen pictures of this not absolutely pristine overall. The little stars are a nice touch there. So all the same, I do have some flexibility if you want to raise it higher, but I'm going to put it at C. But again, I think this is very appropriate for Calvin Coolidge. It might be too ostentatious for Calvin Coolidge.
You're absolutely right. Extremely modest and humble, just like the man himself. But I must say that I would agree with C, but there's a special thing about this place. I have to go B.
I'll live with that, and I think Dr. Joe Fakosh will agree with that too. I know he's a very big fan of that area. So again, it's very fitting.
It is
with that, and I'm sure next time I go, I will appreciate it even more because there'll be different circumstances.
Of course, yes, absolutely. So we go from the wonderful, beautiful area, mountains of Vermont, to the spectacular grounds at Hyde Park, and we take a look at the man who held the office of presidency longer than anyone, and that, of course, is Franklin Delano Roosevelt, there buried at Hyde Park with Eleanor. Take it away, Kurt.
Well, kind of his whole life, Franklin was looking up to his 5th cousin, Theodore, and followed his footsteps in a lot of regards with the positions that he held. And I think he would be quite pleased that if I gave Theodore Roosevelt's grave a B, that I am also giving him a B. This is the appropriate place for him to be interred, in the Rose Garden next to his birthplace home. And beyond that, he lived here. Of course, there are spurts where he was living in New York and the White House, but he did technically live here his entire life. He's very much a part of this place. This is where he went to every time when he was facing an election. He would listen or wait for the returns at Springwood here, and so this is, you're kind of standing from this perspective, kind of near where that gravesite is. Where you took that photo. So you go in there, and he's in there with arguably the greatest first lady we've had, or if not, definitely one of them, Eleanor Roosevelt. And so they're there, and of course, people are a big fan of Fala.
Fala right behind them.
Fala, there we are. Fala. Got that souvenir during my first visit.
Cool.
Actually, that was my sister's, and then she gave it to me. But she was a fan of dogs, not presents. And then one point, she's like, "You take Fala," and that was a nice gift from her. So Fala and Chief, two Roosevelt dogs, are interred behind the gravestone there, right by that. It's kind of hard to see in that picture, but that's a sundial.
Yeah.
Back there, they have flush markers.
Yep.
I think.
You say B.
Yeah, so I'm gonna say B. I think that and it looks nice, but I'd like and I know depending if you hop a hedge, you can get a little bit closer, especially if there's nobody there, because the library's closed due to COVID. But I think because you can't get right up close to it. That's, again, a slight detraction, even though maybe it actually looks better seeing it from farther away. But also something I think I'd like them to do is if they could restore the lettering, put whatever they're supposed to do to bring out the letters, like the black. I don't want to say ink. I don't actually know what they would put in there, but just so you could read the inscription better. Franklin Delano Roosevelt in the years, and Eleanor Roosevelt in the years. But the library is right there too.
It is right here.
Very good library. It's a very solid B for me. The grave, I would say the whole entire picture, I would give an A. The river,
I agree.
The grave, the home, and the library.
I think it's teetering on an A, but we'll keep him at B, but I think a very high B.
Yeah. Again, just because I want to give greater emphasis to the actual grave.
I agree. I agree.
Again, if we were saying the entire package outweighs everything, then I'd say an A.
I agree. Yeah. And then we go from FDR to another one of our most beloved presidents, especially since his death. He's become even more popular. And the one of the main, if not the main attraction, one of the top 2 or 3 main attractions in Arlington National Cemetery, and we take a look at the spectacular eternal flame of John Fitzgerald Kennedy, the 35th president of the United States. I had a very unique experience here. You see this picture on your screen. This is right when the cemetery opened. This is right when they reopened from COVID last year. And I literally, when I went through the metal detector at security, they told me you literally have the entire gravesite and cemetery to yourself. I was the only visitor at that time. It was a weekday. I stood here, and I'm going to show you a video in a second. It's only about 15 seconds long, of how quiet and solemn and amazing of an experience I had here at Kennedy's grave. Kurt, what are your thoughts here on good old JFK's grave?
I mean, other than Grant's tomb, maybe, and probably more so just due to the recency in public memory, probably the most famous presidential gravesite. Overall, if anybody has been to a presidential gravesite, unless they're people like us who have decided they want to go to every one. Generally, if they've been to one of the 39, it's this one, and I think that says something. And the stones are from Cape Cod, where obviously him being from Massachusetts, and there's the Hyannis compound there that the Kennedys have. That's a nice personal touch there. The eternal flame, originally lit by Mrs. Kennedy.
Yep.
It's a gorgeous. It's just a gorgeous spot overlooking the city. If you Washington D.C. If you turned around, of course, there's a lot of people say, "Oh, Kennedy and Taft, they're in Washington D.C.," but no, they're actually in Arlington, Virginia. But you can definitely. It's as close as you can get without being in it, and you can see the city from there. Especially if you were at the Lee house up there, the Robert E. Lee and his wife, their estate there, and that's out also actually up there. That's where Pierre L'Enfant is interred, the gentleman who laid out Washington D.C. and he's buried overlooking everything, and you can see Kennedy's grave from up there. So the view, though most intimate from this angle, if you go up to the mansion up there, and you can look down at the Kennedy grave and overlook everything: the Capitol, the Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Monument, and I would say it's a very moving place. Obviously, a great many people have seen the Zapruder film, and
of course,
there was a lot of people symbolize a lot like youth and hope of progress in some regards, and I think there's definitely something about the possibilities and the promise, what could have been. Maybe they wouldn't have lived up to expectations in some regards, but we'll never know for sure. And definitely killed, too soon. Well,
yes,
it had never been killed, but definitely left us too soon.
Yeah, left us too soon. I agree with everything you said. And this is one of those grave sites. It might be the most. When you stand there, usually you're standing there with other people, and you just feel a tremendous, at least I do, and Kurt, you might be able to agree with this, just a tremendous amount of sadness and tragedy, obviously, surrounding the way Kennedy died. And you just feel that when you're standing there, with the eternal flame.
Mm-hmm.
And this video really speaks to the silence and the solitude of this gravesite. So take a look here real quick. So there you go. I mean, it's just amazing. It's just, I got to be there by myself. The flag was flying at half staff in the background due to COVID and victims of COVID-19. And you literally could hear a pin drop, especially if you're there, standing there, luckily enough by yourself early in the morning. So spectacular. I don't think anything else needs to be said. I think we both agree this definitely goes right up to A tier, correct?
Correct.
All right. Now we move on to our next president, who actually surprised me quite a bit, this presidential gravesite, I must admit. And we're taking a look all the way in Iowa at President Herbert Hoover. Take it away there, Kurt.
Yeah, this is another one where I've been only once. So when I was 9 years old. So another one that I would definitely like to revisit, being an adult now. So they tell me I'm an adult. But I was a fan of this one. My father was as well, and the shrubbery behind it looks nice, doesn't it? Just even in the shot. So he and First Lady Lou Hoover are interred there. She was originally interred in California, and when he decided, I want us to be buried here, they actually disinterred her and relocated the former First Lady to Iowa, where Herbert Hoover was born in West Branch, Iowa. In fact, from the gravesite, you can look out and see his birth cottage and vice versa. And that was purposely done. Somebody who grew up to be a very wealthy individual, millionaire, geologist, work related to mines, and then philanthropy, and definitely generally criticized for how he handled the Great Depression. He was all about kind of this kind of cooperation among the general populace, that was the way to go instead of overall direct government intervention. Again, nothing totally black and white there. You know, he gave a little bit in some regards, but he definitely thought that FDR was promising too much and going too far. But he was very popular before that, and you know, definitely rose from. He was an orphan. His father died when he was quite young, and then his mother died just a few years later when he was 9 years old. So 9 years old, both his parents were deceased. He moved around, lived with some different relatives he was out in Oregon for a little bit, but in the end, this is where his Presidential Library Museum ended up, and this is where his gravesite is. And you can be an orphan living in this cottage in Iowa, you know, and then taken away from there, sent across the country, and you end up being a millionaire and president of the United States. And then this is where you end back up. And I think that's very interesting, appropriate. So I'm good. I'm ready to give this a B. I know we've got a lot of B's there, but there's a lot of good president graves. I mean, they're just
I would you know, I'll put him at B. I can make an argument for A with him. Honestly, I really could. This is the gravesite that probably surprised me in the most in a wonderful way. I never expected to find this gravesite to be something I enjoyed. Believe it or not, my father, who was still alive during all of my presidential gravesite visits, I would send him the photos immediately so he could see them when I was on the road. Obviously, the only two he didn't see were the two in California, but my father passed away in February. And this, you know, he was a huge Kennedy fan, and he had been there before in Arlington, but this was his favorite presidential gravesite. He thought it was spectacular from the photos. So I can almost argue A. I'll keep him at B, but I think he's a high B teetering on A. It is truly a phenomenal site, in my opinion. So,
yeah, I can see that. Although, yeah, I'm gonna stick to my guns here with B. But I would definitely, if I had to move him, I would definitely move him up as opposed to down.
I agree. And then, you know, we go from Herbert Hoover, and I guess I have to ask you the question of Kurt, do you like Ike? As they said, I like Ike. We take a look all the way out there
in large part,
all the way out there in Kansas to Dwight David Eisenhower, General Eisenhower, Ike. And take it away, Kurt. Go ahead.
So this is the place of meditation, and it was purposely built to hold the Eisenhower remains. There's Dwight Eisenhower, First Lady Mamie Eisenhower, and a son of theirs that died about 100 years ago. He was just a very, very small child, got sick. I believe it was scarlet fever. I know that's just me thinking off the top of my head, but so they are there now, and you can see they're kind of sunken a little bit in this area within the place of meditation. This is at the Eisenhower Presidential Center. There is the Eisenhower Childhood Home there in Abilene, Kansas. So right there at the center, there's the Presidential Museum with the exhibits. There's the library with the archives. There's a statue of General Eisenhower, and there's the grave. So this is a little plaque that is at the foot of the vault there. Mamie Eisenhower has a matching one with her information. And so TJ showing you there the juxtaposition of that, and there I am next to President Eisenhower. So
no, I never got inside of this. Obviously, I stood right outside this picture. These two pictures at the beginning; those are pictures I took from my visit there. The door was locked. The library was closed due to COVID. So I probably stood within 25 feet, if that, of General and President Eisenhower's gravesite. So I will let Kurt strictly grade this himself. What are you going with this?
Well, some of the details I haven't touched upon are, especially when you go inside, it's interesting because it's ostensibly like a non-denominational chapel, but technically it's also not at the same time. It's interesting. It's very much 1960s. You can look back there and you in that photo and you see it looks like there's like stained glass windows.
Yeah.
But at least some of them are very much almost kind of like hodgepodge 60s style art, instead of not necessarily your traditional stained glass window. So it feels like it's very much of its time, which, while I think that can be good for some graves and styles, I feel that this isn't necessarily my favorite style. But although this was approved when Eisenhower was there, and he certainly knew all about this, and I'm sure was instrumental in making certain choices. The quotes on the 3 surrounding walls are nice from different addresses. But I'm feeling a C on this one.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Even though I haven't seen the inside personally, based on the pictures and standing right there, I would think that a C is very appropriate.
Yeah. And again, definitely good personal touches. And everything, but not my favorite.
Yeah, no, I don't blame it. And now we move on to
finally the 1970s now with deaths. So we're getting there. We've got 6 more dead presidents.
And then here we go to the one that I can't comment on because I stood outside of the doors of the Presidential Library and Museum there in Independence, Missouri, but it was closed due to COVID and for renovations. So I have never been inside of the building or to the courtyard that holds the remains, the resting place of President Harry S. Truman. So take it away, Kurt.
Well, this is your photo here of the exterior of the Truman Library, Independence, Missouri. My father and I absolutely loved our time in Independence, getting to walk the neighborhood where Truman did, see the house where he and Bess Truman raised their only child. This was a very good museum with a very good exhibit practices. And even though I wasn't a public history student yet, I very much gravitated toward the style of what they were doing in the exhibits here. And I know that due to the renovations, they just recently even overdid that. So I'm sure it's even better than it was here in August 2009. And I really loved this. And I'm going to actually say, and you'll be able to determine from what I say here, what letter grade I'm going to give this, but this is my second favorite president grave. That's right, after Garfield. I actually enjoyed this more than Lincoln's, more than so this is an A for me. Okay. I think that from within the museum, there's a statue of President Truman smiling. So where that area there, where there's the glass kind of like left center. Kind of behind that tree, you can't see there, but you might be able to see just the tiniest speck of a flame. There's an eternal flame
right
there.
Here where the cursor is, yes.
Yeah. So behind that, there is a statue of Truman within the museum. He looks out over the flame, over toward his and Bess's grave sites there, surrounded, at least at that time, by the purple flowers. Another very cool thing there was, so we went on a Thursday, and I believe it still might be true when they're open again. Everything with COVID is totally askew and always changing. But was the situation that the museum was open later on Thursday night. So we went out. So we were there during maybe the morning, maybe early afternoon. Went out, got some other graves like Carrie Nation. And I think Jesse James, came back at night and went out into that courtyard at night. And to be there alone in the courtyard with the Trumans, you can see the statue all lit up inside, looking out over the flame. So I don't think I included a photo of that I sent to you to include with this. But it's on my Instagram, I think, from last year when Kevin Cranford and I did of United Statues of America. We did a presidential statues talk on Instagram. I think I posted this that in the lead up to it. I mean, it was absolutely just phenomenal. And then also their only child, Margaret Truman, her ashes are interred there along with her husband toward the foot of the Truman graves there. So right kind of out of view to the left. Yep.
Very
so and right near there too is a great quote of Truman's. It's on the wall right near the grave, and it says, "The truth is all I want for history." And I think that's very important. And also sometimes people in trying to have a more complete view of history, sometimes people are like, oh, that's revisionist history, but I like to term it as like correctionist history. You're trying to correct the actual revisions,
yes,
and actually make it more truthful and whatnot. And I think Harry Truman was somebody. The buck stops here.
Yes.
And I think he was somebody who definitely had his faults, but I think he wasn't afraid to lay all his cards on the table. I think he was a very introspective and honest person. Again, definitely some personal faults, and you can disagree with some of the decisions that he made as president, for sure, perhaps. But I just really like everything about that whole place, and that courtyard is spectacular. And if when they open back up, if they still do Thursday nights, you can go back at night, go there on a summer night, and you will fall in love with it. Is what I have to say. And the grave there got all his accomplishments he was proud of, including the birth of his daughter. So that's a proud father right there.
Yeah, that is very, very cool.
And that is an A grave, in my opinion.
I can't disagree, even though I've never seen it personally right there in person. Can't disagree. That's phenomenal and very well broken down by you. Now we move on to Stonewall, Texas, and give us a little bit of the Johnson treatment, and let's go take a look at LBJ.
Nobody wants to see me that close to the camera, TJ. The Johnson treatment, invading personal space. But well, you and I are both guilty of something.
That's why I included this shot, Kurt.
Private do not enter. They might have, you know what? I don't know if that was there when I went. Maybe they specifically added it because I went over.
Yeah.
But, it's in person. It's something that you can kind of read by the wall. I believe the inscriptions. But again, if I'm trying to convey to people, in pictures on the internet, and I want to get right up there. So again, it was absolutely no disrespect intended to the Johnson family or anything, but I went over the wall in Stonewall, and so did you separately. I think you escaped unscathed. I did not, but again, that's another anecdote for the book. But I know I've told you, but I gotta leave something for where people are interested.
I hear you.
Actually, buy it.
So, where are we going with LBJ? Where are we going?
I'm going to go with the C. I think
agree.
This is definitely the place for him to be.
Yeah.
I mean, this is LBJ world. There's the replica birthplace. There's the Texas White House where he lived and where he had his fatal heart attack. The descendants of his cattle still roam there.
Yes, they do.
His family is buried in the cemetery. This is the place for him to be. But and it does have the presidential seal, so that's nice, and it's right by the river. So it's definitely very fitting. The inscription could be a little hard to read, and also I don't like that you're not supposed to get right up next to it. So those are a couple drawbacks for me, but otherwise, a decent grave with a very appropriate placement.
I agree with you, and we go from Texas to the final grave of my journey of presidential graves, And apparently, I don't know if you knew, Kurt, but apparently we do not have Nixon to kick around anymore. So we take a look in Yorba Linda, California, at good old Tricky Dick Richard Nixon. Take it away.
Well, this is a great shot to lead off with because this is definitely the closest any president is interred to the place they were born, because there's Nixon's grave on the right, kind of, in the center there, actually, but the right of the plot next to Mrs. Nixon. And there's the house where Richard Nixon was born, right there on the right-hand side. So it was a catalog house. They didn't know, at least at the time I visited, if it was Sears catalog, but his father built it, and so there they are, where he came into the world, and where he'll spend the rest of planet Earth's existence, I guess. And right there, that is a really nice shot there too. So this is also should be pointed out that this is at the Nixon Library too, and that is a whole other discussion, the history of the exhibits inside of the Nixon Library. In fact, actually, my undergrad capstone project was about the history of the Watergate exhibit at the Nixon Library, and the ups and downs of that. It's had its good points, it's had its bad points in history, and then I actually followed up on it a little bit in grad school because I took kind of an opposite perspective with some additional stuff that I added. So so I could have actually done better with it, even though I got an A, and I kicked butt with that performance. Definitely best presentation I ever did. A lot of fodder here, and I will say that I think that his quote on his grave is my favorite quote, maybe of all time. Is the greatest honor history can bestow is the title of peacemaker. And that's now Nixon didn't live up to that quote from himself, but it's a great sentiment, and it's a nice looking grave with no difficulty reading it whatsoever. The black with the gold, that's a very good color combo. That's why a lot of important road signs are that black and gold combo, because that's the easiest to read, or at least among them. Yeah. So here with that grave, you got that, and great placement. But also not too much going on. But again, should there be more going on? So I can go in the B or C range. I'm gonna say high C. If you want to talk me up, I'm fine with it.
I got to talk you up. I got to go B. And the reason I have to go B for Nixon, I thought it was really, really nice and well done. I love the fact that he's in the closest proximity to his birthplace. And you see the hedge here. You can't go directly up to the grave. And even though, just like Tricky Dick, I'm not a crook, but I did hop the hedge, and I got a picture right next to his headstone there. But again, as Kurt said, no disrespect to the library or to the the people that take care of it, or the Nixon family. It's just something that we like to do if we can. I thought it was great. I think it deserves a B.
I'm fine with that.
All right, and then we move on, of course, to his other California mate out there, good old Ronald Reagan, in beautiful Simi Valley, California, with the spectacular Air Force One pavilion inside of the library museum. So take it away, Kurt.
Well, this is a grave. So I went in 2008. So something of note is Nancy Reagan was still alive when my father and I visited in August 2008. So her inscription, her name, and her years were not on the marker there. But this is a good grave for sure, and it's also got a nice inspiring quote from Reagan. But behind it, got the presidential seal. I can't remember verbatim what the quote says right now, but I think something like, "I believe in my heart that man is good." That there's that what is right will always eventually triumph, and there's purpose and worth to each and every life. So that's definitely a good quote to have. And there you can see Ronald Wilson Reagan and his dates, and then Nancy Davis Reagan and her dates on there. Now, the best part about this really is that looking over Simi Valley, right there from the grave. You turn around and it's gorgeous. And part of the library there is you go into the Air Force One pavilion, and it's this big glass room, glass panels, and the plane looks like it could take right off, as my dad put in our home videos.
He's right. He's right.
So definitely just a gorgeous view there. And I would say the two best views from a presidential gravesite property are this and the view from Monticello. Is absolutely gorgeous too. Not necessarily so much when you're standing at Jefferson's grave itself. Yeah. So I will say property-wise, presidential grave property, pretty close, but this, this definitely for standing at the gravesite itself, I think best view from a presidential grave.
I agree with you. So where are we going here? I actually think this could be up to A, but are we in B tier? Where are we at?
I'm feeling B. Feeling B.
All right, I'll go with B. I agree with you. Very spectacular, though. Very, very wonderful.
Yep.
I loved it tremendously. I really did.
And again, this is a place where I imagine it's open most of the year. Again, maybe COVID notwithstanding, but you can go right up there if you have a disability, and again, as close as anybody can get to the fence. I did not hop this fence, so
no, I did not either. So.
No, and even though there were some other people there, but sometimes you got to gauge it, and this one didn't feel right at this juncture. So
I agree.
Mrs. Reagan was still alive, and so did not do that. And probably never would consider it, this one anyway. Again. Yeah. But I'm feeling B. But I'll say it's definitely in the B or B plus range for me.
I agree with you on that. And now we go all the way over to Michigan, Grand Rapids, Michigan, and we take a look at the gravesite of Leslie Lynch King Jr., aka Gerald Ford. Take it away there, Kurt.
The penultimate grave we have tonight. President Ford died in 2006, the day after Christmas, and he's at the Gerald Ford Presidential Museum. Now, he's thus far is the only president where the museum and the library are housed separate places. The museum is in Grand Rapids, and the library, the archives, are in Ann Arbor, Michigan. But he and Mrs. Ford are here at the museum in Grand Rapids. Now, this is another one where when my father and I visited, Mrs. Ford was still alive. We visited in April 2010 there. So you can see here its proximity to the Ford Museum. And so this one you can get right up next to, again, as long as you're not locked out due to COVID or something. But so there I am, literally, up against the wall. Gerald R. Ford, 1913 to 2006, and on the other side is say Elizabeth, Bloomer Ford, and her birth year and her death year of 2011. So she passed away the year after my father and I went. There's something. It's weird because it definitely has its charm in its own way. It can also be a little bit antiseptic, but they try with the flowers. And I think also since Betty Ford died, I think they have another kind of like memorial, say, outside the gate saying President Mrs. Ford are here. That was not there when I went. And the highway is right behind it. So that's, right, I mean, when my father and I were there, I think like an 18-wheeler. So it's kind of it's interesting. So I could maybe be flexible on this, but all the same, if we're considering president graves, I almost want to go with high D or low C. But I'm going to say high D. Where do you feel?
I have to agree with you. I'd say probably high D or very low C. I think we can keep them at D. I couldn't go right up to the wall, as you guys see in this shot, because the gate was closed due to COVID. The museum was not open. And now his library in Ann Arbor, that's actually on the grounds of the University of Michigan. Am I correct?
Could be. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah, I think it is. I'm pretty sure it is.
I've not gone to the archives and I can't remember.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll go with D. And now we move to our final president who just passed away a couple years ago. And we take a look at in College Station, Texas, at the gravesite of George Herbert Walker Bush. So Kurt, why don't you take this away?
Yeah, so Gerald Ford died in 2006, and we went close to 12 years without another president passing away. But then George Bush died in it was November 30th, 2018, and I remember I learned about it. It was like 11 o'clock at night, 11:30, and I was very animated. I was like, my friends, I'm like, oh my goodness, he passed away and everything, and. No, obviously that was sad, and you had lost Barbara Bush, the first lady, earlier in the year. But in a sense, kind of comforting. They didn't spend that much time apart in a sense, and they're there at the library and a kind of touching gravesite with one of their children, Robin, who died of leukemia at a very young age. Sad story there. So you go around the back of the library museum, and so technically you could actually access this without even paying admission to the library. My father and I went to the grave first before we went in there. So you go walk around the back, and you go around over a bridge, if I recall correctly. Then you get to, I think that's when you get to this area that you photograph. You continue walking up that path, and you end up here. At the Bush family plot. You walk around, and the three Bushes are interred there. You have the presidential seal. The gate's pretty nice. I wish I could have gotten inside the gate, but it's interesting looking. That looks it's very well manicured. There, President Bush, his World War II service was very important to him, and so that is what is listed on the cross there. So his headstone is the cross, and then the footstone it says his name and the dates. Mrs. Bush is on the right there. The daughter Robin is on the left. An interesting nuance of this is I don't think we have any pictures, at least that I submitted to you. You probably don't have any prepared. Is I believe on the four kind of the endpoints, the corners of the fence, I believe they're globes. So that's an interesting touch. So I think those are globes. So that's an extra little nuance there. And then on the column there on the right hand side, you see, so that says, up close, that's George H.W. Bush. Or I might just say, George Bush, 1924 to 2018, Barbara Bush, her years, and Robin Bush as well. So, and the museums, they're nice too, and it's pretty nice walking back there. Feels very much kind of reminded me almost of like the sereneness of the San Antonio River walk at night, but all the same. Comparing it to some other president graves, I'm feeling a C.
All right, since it's our very last one of the night, I'm going to fight you a little bit. I think I would move this up to B. And the reason I say that is because I thought that this was another one that surprised me. I thought it was beautiful. The grave site itself is so. It's pretty nice, of course. Beautiful presidential emblem and seal there. I just thought this right here, this walk back there, and this, little lake behind the museum. I just thought overall, all of it, when you take it all into consideration, especially this walk back to the gravesite, I thought it was just tremendously beautiful and well landscaped. And then all of a sudden it just opens up to this, to the plots of George and Barbara and their daughter, Robin. So I think I would move it to B. Do you have a problem with that?
Okay. You know what? I'm trying to look at some of the other presidents I've got in B. or C, right? And I could see like, okay, Hoover's and Bush being comparable, and I could see maybe, do I really want to rank him as low as say Eisenhower's or Jefferson? So I'll give him a low B because the gate was locked. Now I know when I went, it was March 2019, and technically both the president and first lady had passed away within the last year, and I know, so there was some recency effect there too. So that we actually met with the director, and he said if it had been 50 years or something, I would have let you in, because we had brought up Garfield, we got in, and
Of course.
And everything, but so Warren Finch, the director, actually met with us, and he was very nice, and he was expecting us because we had tried. we wrote him a few different ways, and but very, very cordial, gentleman, and we were understanding of it, and maybe I'll get in there someday. His advice was to, after some more time has passed, write to George W. Bush about it. That was the one thing I'm like, I have a feeling that George W. Bush will not be responding to that. What? I guess in a sense, you never know unless you try. So.
That's right. That's right. So here you go, guys. This is the final grades given by Kurt and myself.
A lot of B's.
A lot of B's. Good amount of A's. Only 2 F's, according to Kurt and myself, down there with Van Buren in Cleveland. So there you go, taking a look there. This has been tremendous fun. This was great. I know we've had a lot of audience comments and participation throughout this. People have really enjoyed it and loved it.
Are there any questions that people had before? I'm sure we want to wrap up at some point. If there's any questions we could answer that people have asked.
Yeah, if there's any questions that I might have missed, maybe ask them now at the bottom. I'm just kind of scrolling back through to see if I see anything. Thomas Balserski said to us earlier, hello from Missouri, because he's currently in Missouri. I know he's going to be. I know he would be chiming in. Les, one of my subscribers from England, asked, "Is Eisenhower the only one in Kansas?" And yes, of course he is. I don't see
somebody's up in England right now.
Yeah, he said it's 3:30 in the morning, but he's awesome. He's
awesome. We're honored that.
Yes, we are. Sure. Yes, we are. I mean, it's awesome that he stayed with us to watch this whole thing. And I think, I don't see too many other questions, right now off the top of my head without scrolling all the way back up.
We were pretty thorough. I'll say that. We talked a little bit about, obviously, our personal experiences. We talked about, they saw pictures, what they looked like, and again, they could even see some of the changes that happened from when. And again, a lot of them I started in 2003. And then again, I finished up in 2012, barring President Bush, of course. And you went to these places overall, other than some early like school trips or family trips to like Kennedy or Grant's tomb, last year. So a lot could have changed between 2003 and 2020.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. We saw that in a lot of the depictions and the pictures. And we do have one quick question here. Dominic, he asked us, out of the presidents that are currently alive, which ones do you think could reach the rank of A? And I think it's an interesting question, but I think it's really hard for us to really say because out of the ones that are still alive, we know Obama's going to be having a library. I'm sure the Clinton will have a library. We just don't know. We don't even know where really what the whole locale is going to look like.
I'm gonna make a prediction, and that I'll say none of them. I will say none of. I'm gonna be bold and say that I don't envision any of the current living presidents having one that would reach an A.
Okay,
For my
and
opinion.
that is a bold, but I understand where you come from. Now, listen, it's a good thing that our last president, not our current one, but our former president, is not watching this, because he would probably argue with you and say his would be an A plus. His would be the greatest of all time, Mr. Donald Trump. So we have a couple more
That
questions.
sounds like him.
Yeah, it does. It does. So will you both attend President Carter's funeral when he does pass? I will definitely attend the public viewing, basically because I've never done it before. Kurt, is that something that you would be interested in going to see?
Depends on the circumstances. So, right. So there's also the difference between the funeral and a lying in state or public viewing. The funeral itself, and I know what you mean, but the funeral itself, just to be technical, would be just like invitation only. Maybe, for instance, at the Washington National Cathedral. I'm sure there would be something at the Maranatha Baptist Church in Georgia, where President Carter, I imagine at this point, used to teach Sunday school. My father and I actually met him and Mrs. Carter there in June 2013 and listened to him teach Sunday school for an hour. Very interesting experience, and we have it on DVD because you could buy the DVD, and even retroactively. I just bought it like a couple of years ago, which was 6 years after the fact, and got to get our picture with the Carters. I know he has it like meticulously planned out. Again, I hope he lives to be 200. So, but he's next month, he is set to turn 97. He's the oldest U.S. president ever right now at 96. And, every day he adds to that longevity record. I hope that, again, he lives to 200, would definitely, hopefully, put us past COVID circumstances. So, honestly, it depends what situations are where, what will my work situation be? Can I get, can I get work off at the time? Again, depending on what that is, what are the public health circumstances? Again, hopefully, he's alive, many years from now, and this pandemic is behind us, but it depends. I would have gone down to Washington D.C. Last year with the Ruth Bader Ginsburg ceremonies had COVID not been around. So I can't make a prediction, but if possible, I would, because I went when I was 9 years old. My father drove me down from Rhode Island to go see Reagan Lion State, and we waited in line from it was 9 at night to 2 in the morning. So to see, and we walked around for literally 1 minute. My dad counted 60 seconds. We walked around the casket in the rotunda, but we both thought it was worth it. And we'll never forget that, even though we had to deal with the humidity and the brood 10 cicadas. So if you saw in the news recently, those cicadas that were all coming out in the mid-Atlantic region there, they come out every 17 years. So this was the first time that brood 10 had been out since we had to deal with them seeing Reagan Lion State, and they were everywhere. And they are intense.
It's unreal.
So that was something to think about, that like, these haven't been out since I was 9 years old, and here they are. And it was a good talking point for people.
That's funny. We have a couple more here. When you were a kid, for both of us, did you ever think that you would visit every presidential gravesite? Me, myself, absolutely not. Kurt, I would think absolutely, because you started this when you were a kid.
Yeah, I mean, when I was 8, no. When I was 9, yes. I asked Brian Lamb and Richard Norton Smith, instrumental in that, and then it just came full circle in 2015 when Brian Lamb interviewed me on Q&A, and he did want to he didn't want to be the focus of it, so so the one thing he asked me was to talk a little bit more about Richard Norton Smith as opposed to him. But really, they're both, if anything, it's like certainly both of them, but in a way, almost like more so Brian Lamb, inspiring this quest. And now I got a cool C-SPAN mug. So
that's awesome.
But if anybody is ever interested in that interview, that's on the C-SPAN website. Just look that up, and it was like something like 58 minutes nonstop. There were no breaks, no editing. It was just we sit down and we just talked, and that was very cool being on there. Like, he interviewed John Lewis on that show, a Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens, and I was 20 at the time, and just talk about President Graves. So like, how can I be on this show that some of these other people have been on? So that's on there, talking about.
I'm gonna leave a link to that. I'm gonna leave a link to that in the comments below, so people can find that easily. Yeah. Here, another one. Which grave would you say was the most underrated, and what grave pleasantly surprised you? My personal opinion, underrated. I think a little bit. I would probably say Coolidge a little bit is a little underrated. And what pleasantly surprised me, in my opinion, I already spoke about this earlier, would be Herbert Hoover. I was pleasantly surprised by Hoover. And I think that Coolidge was probably the most underrated. What do you think, Kurt?
I'm not sure. To be honest, I don't know how to really answer that, because I feel like, I feel also because I went to a lot of these so young, and I have a lot of vivid memories, as well as like the pictures in the video. I feel like in my mind, they're pretty stagnant. And overall, I mean, look at us. We didn't disagree all too much. And even when we did, it was off by like one letter grade. We were never really like, we're, totally, disparate opinions. So I don't know if I have a finger on the pulse of the entire presidential grave hunting community of who's underrated, overrated. I guess pleasantly surprised. I guess I would have to go with Reagan, because I don't think that you can, and we saw the pictures there, but I don't know if you can fully appreciate the view until you go there. I mean, I told you when you were heading out there, I said, you're going to love the view from the Air Force One Pavilion. You're going to love the view standing at the gravesite, looking over it. And you told me, you said, I did not overplay that whatsoever. But I think that's something that you can only fully get when you go there. So I can answer that one. I'm not sure about the other one.
Yeah, I agree. And last but not least, the last question we'll have from Les. He said, Jimmy Carter, he surely has to be the president who has seen the most presidential deaths in his lifetime. I would assume so. Yeah. I mean, he's been alive the longest. I mean, well, he's obviously, since his presidency, he's seen, seen Reagan.
We've seen, I've got the list right here, and I can tell you that Wilson died in February of 24. And he would be the last one there. So that means he has seen 12 presidential deaths, going from Taft in 1930 to Bush 3 years ago. So could be. I mean, I'm not going to sit here at this point in time definitely do the math, but Washington the least. I'll say that. But, it very well could be. With 12, Taft, Coolidge, Roosevelt, Kennedy, Hoover, Eisenhower, Truman, Johnson, Nixon, Reagan, Ford, Bush.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, that's incredible. 12 of them. So, I think that's it, Kurt. I cannot thank you enough, man. This has been a lot of fun. It's been wonderful.
Well, you first asked me about this. We actually connected, I think it was in January. So you asked, and it was right after I did my my talk with Joe Carroll on Instagram. You said we should do this. So you first brought this up to me 8 months ago, just within a few weeks of us connecting. So
yeah, I mean, I thought it was just a really unique idea. Everyone, or not everyone, a lot of people grade the U.S. presidents based on their presidency, but we're some of the first to really go through and do the presidential gravesite grading, and you're the guy to ask, because honestly, most of the things I learn about these grave sites in these different locations, truly and honestly, guys, is from Kurt. He's tremendous, a very, very learned person, very, very intelligent. And he, for lack of a better term, he knows his stuff. That's for sure. And
I appreciate that, TJ.
I mean it sincerely. It's been a sincere pleasure. And yeah, I appreciate it, Kurt. Thank you so much. This was gracious of you to do. I'm going to leave all of you real quick. I am going to show that slideshow that was playing in the beginning with the actual Hail to the Chief music. I think it's a total of maybe 2 minutes long total. But it actually shows side by side both Kurt and myself at each of these grave sites. So enjoy that with the music. Thanks so much for everybody that tuned in. Thank you, Kurt, again. This has been a real pleasure. And hopefully we'll do something down the road, maybe even vice presidential gravesite gradings one day. So thank you again, Kurt. Good night, everyone.
I have one more request, and that is I want everybody to pester TJ to go to Supreme Court Justice graves. So.
Okay. Well, if people do that, then they have to make sure they pester Kurt to go to as many Hall of Fame baseball grave sites as he can. So,
I'm already there. So
yeah, I know, I get it. But Kurt, thanks again, and everybody take a look here at the slideshow, and everyone have a good night. Thanks again.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks again, guys. Adios.